How great I am, great I am. Alright, how's it going, everybody? My name is Infamous Isaac. I'm here with a video on FGO. It's been a little bit since I talked about the story for this game, but that's because the story updates didn't come out until recently. Early this June, a story update came out, LB6, and I'm going to be talking about that today. I'm going to be talking about part 1. So, this is going to be part 1. Part 2 well, this video will release when part 2 comes out and when I finish it, so you guys will see it then. But regardless, let me get into the non-spoilers for part 1. Part 2 will have non-spoilers as well, so I'm going to say right off the bat, this Lost Belt, this first half of this Lost Belt is amazing. Again, I'm not going to get into deep into the spoilers until that section comes up, but it's awesome. I can't recommend enough to catch up to the story now if you're playing this game already. LB6 is the best story content we've gotten from FGO to this day, and it's only the first half. This content is amazing. I am literally so invested in this story right now. The characters, the world, the story going on, the stakes. Kinoko Nasu really was cooking when he wrote this, and everybody who helped write, bro. Literally some of the best storytelling I've seen in a mobile game, and honestly, some games, period. Like, visual novels just have such a way of grabbing you if they're really, really good. And since this is a visual novel slash mobile game, such a gacha game, it grabs me. It really, really grabs me. And I just can't talk about it enough. I'm not gonna rate it until the second part of the Lost Belt comes out, which should be in like a couple days from when I'm recording this. Right now, things are looking good. Things are looking really good. I cannot talk about this enough without getting into spoilers. So just know, if I had to rate it right now, it would be a 9.5, but that's only for the first part. The second part still hasn't come out yet. It's not a full rating, but it's good. It's great. It's awesome. I love it. Best story in the game so far. But regardless, let me get into the spoilers. So, as per usual, let me say that I am going to be talking about spoilers for Lost Bolt 1, or excuse me, not Lost Bolt 1, Lost Bolt 6 Part 1, and then when the other part comes out, Lost Bolt 6 Part 2. I am going to give a warning for that as well when I put it in. But for right now, just know that there will be spoilers, so be forewarned. Regardless, Lost Belt 6 Part 1. Where do I begin? Well, let me just say that the stakes are already set from the beginning. We get introduced back to, so I cut this part out really badly, but it's supposed to say we get introduced back to Novum Chaldea, where they're residing currently for the Lost Belts. Where we have Sion basically telling everybody like, yo, the Earth is gonna die. Like everybody's gonna die in 24 hours. So what we need you to do is you need to go to Lost Belt 6, Britain, when we thought we weren't going to go there. And everybody was like, but why are we going there now, right? And it's because the Lost Belt is going to implode in itself and it's going to end the entire world. It's a whole different phenomenon from what the bleaching the world was in like the beginning of the Lost Belts, or incinerating the world like in the singularities, right? It says this is the most pressing problem that we need to deal with now. This is why we're in Lost Belt 6 instead of immediately Lost Belt 7 with David, right? We all get ready. Well, as many people as that can get ready. Sion's staying back because she has to stay with Trimajestus the second. Everybody else gets ready, so all of Novum Chaldea goes into Lost Belt 6, right? So, for a head count, basically the people that are going are Da Vinci, Holmes, Gordolf, all the members, including Munier. We have Mash, Captain. You actually have Nemo going as well, all of his crew, and your master, right? That's all that are going. And we get to Lost Boat 6. We land on, not on shore, but we land in the sea. And the main problem arises. Holmes, Nemo, and none of the other members can go except for Da Vinci, Mash, and the Master, right? The Master's already used to us. He's been through this. He's the goat himself, or herself, depending on which gender you choose. Or themselves, depending on if you have no gender. They, it's not a feature, but at the end of the day, whatever you want your character to identify as is whatever you want them to identify as, right? Da Vinci isn't affected by what's going on in the Lost Belt because servants here, they just feel bad. They feel sick. Like Nemo and Holmes, just they can't handle it right now. And Gordolf or nobody else is outfitted for combat like the Master is, right? Or Ritsuka or Fujimaru. I'm just gonna say Fujimaru because that is their default name. Those three go out and they immediately, problems arise, right? So they land on part of the island where it's the basically like a forgetful woods. The deeper you go in, the more you forget, right? It's kind of like Castle Oblivion, right? They all get separated. Immediately, they all just get separated. And our character ends up in a forest, right? In a forest with a bunch of fairies, and they have their own little village. They're all chilling. And what we find out, this village is basically for outcasts, right? And so we have a servant with us. We have Tristan, the knight from Camelot, because we summoned them unintentionally too when we first landed. And so it's Tristan and the master right now, Fujimaru. And we see Artoria, Artoria Caster. So Artoria Caster is basically a member of this Lost Belt. She was born in this Lost Belt. And this is Britain. This Lost Belt is Britain. So Morgan Le Fay, all these people are here from Britain. And Artoria Caster is just here as well because she forgot who she was. She calls herself Mash. She isn't Mash. We don't know why she called herself that, but we'll probably learn later on. And everybody just forgot, right? For the first couple of these nodes, you just forget who you are. The name that you're given if you when you arrive at the village, if you're a male, your name is Lysander, and if you're a female, your name is Hermia. So I thought that was just hilarious, but I had to mention that. I couldn't continue the video without mentioning Lysander the goat. So you wake up in the village, and for the next couple of days, you're there. You live as Lysander and Tristram, which is his name. Just take Tristan, but take the N away and put an M instead, and Mash, which is just Artoria, right? And so you're living in his village. Everybody's loving you. You're having a great time, and then through the days of you living in the village, you remember who you are, right? You all remember who you are, and you realize like, oh shoot, like I'm a human. I can't be here, right? And so the villagers find out that you're a human, and they basically want to kill you, right? Because they can use you as energy to stay alive and for their purpose, right? And fairies in this world are just crazy because they have a lot of purpose. If you die, it's because you lost your purpose, or because you were killed, or because you got turned into a Moor, which is basically like a creature of energy. It's weird to explain. There's a lot of lore in this Lost Belt that I can't go over in this video alone, because to go over that would make this video like 2 hours long, and it's just a lot to remember. You all escape the village. A village gets raised basically because all of them just kill themselves through fighting to try to get to Fujimaru, right? You all manage to escape and you meet somebody. You meet Oberon, right? And Oberon is one of the main servants that's going to be helping you out through your journey, right? He's a fairy king from Midsummer's Dream, I think is what it's called. So after they get taken out of the forest, then they go over to Salisbury, which I'll explain in a second. So we have the other side of the story, right? Where we see Mash, and Mash is in a whole different part of Britain, right? She gets found by three goblins, and they're gonna sell her. But the longer that they stay with her, the more they start to like her, and so they give her the name Anise, and she's just traveling with those three goblins, right? And that's the first fragment. I'll explain the other one later when it comes up. But next we go to Salisbury, right? And this is just one of the towns in Britain. Britain's basically ruled by Morgan Le Fay, aka King Arthur's sister. There's Morgan herself. There's the so I had to come in and edit this, but after Morgan, you have the Tamlin Fairy Knights, who are Tamlin Tristan, which is Morgan's daughter, Tamlin Bargus, the Black Dog, and Tamlin Lancelot, the most beautiful knight of all, apparently. After that, you have the lords that rule over each town. So you have Gloucester. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. You have Salisbury. You have Norwich. You have Sheffield. You have Camelot. All this stuff, right? All these people rule over it. But Salisbury is one of them, and Aurora is the one that rules over it. So we all go to Salisbury. We find Da Vinci here because she works at an inn, right? And she got her memory. She recognizes who she is, right? So she's working at an inn basically to pass the time, get money, and get info on where everybody is, right? And so when she finds us, she's like, "Oh, yo, Fujimaru, you're alive. Great, let's get it." I don't know where Mash is, but this is basically what's going on, right? So she learned a lot about the information on fairies, how they operate, and even though this place seems like it's advanced, it's not. It's basically fairies trying to imitate what human civilization is, because humans exist in this world. It's just that humans are treated more as pets and slaves than they are actual companions or people, you know? So that's why fairies try to imitate them. And there's just a huge array of ways people are treated in this Lost Belt, right? You can either be treated as cattle, you can be treated as slaves, you can be treated as pets, you can be treated as equals, right? And it depends on which town you go to. Aurora in Salisbury treats humans as equals. So basically, while they're in Salisbury, Oberon goes around trying to find more information, and they're just chilling there for a couple days, right? The main goal is basically to get an audience with Aurora because her and Oberon are pretty close, so he can get good with her. They do get that audience eventually. They're training, they're learning more about fairy Britain and all this stuff, and they get that audience with Aurora. They talk to her, and she's basically like, "Yo, I'll help you guys out. I'll help you find Mash and all that, but I can't help you because what we learn is that Artoria is the child of prophecy, and she's meant to be the one to take down Morgan Le Fay because it was prophesized by one of the lords before we got here. She can't help Artoria. She knows that she's the child of prophecy, but she can't, right? That goes against Morgan and all that. So instead, she's like, hey, if you can do this, I'll help you find your friend Mash, and if you prove it to me, you are the child of prophecy, like really, really, I'll let you ring the bell because she has to toll like 6 bells for each city and then go to Camelot and all this stuff to beat Morgan. Crazy stuff. They're waiting there for a couple more days, and we get a message basically like, hey, we think we know where your friend Mash is, right? It's a ranch basically. So the farm is basically a ranch for where humans are kept as slaves near Salisbury. It's not in Salisbury, but it's run by other people. And so we're here to find Mash. It doesn't turn out well. We managed to free a lot of people, but Gawain shows up. Fairy Knight Gawain. This is our first sighting of a Fairy Knight, right? So she's super strong. We can't handle her because all we have is Da Vinci and Artoria, right? And Tristan as well. I forgot to mention Tristan. He's still here. So when she's fighting us, we just can't handle her. She's too strong, right? And so Tristan does a sacrificial play where he sacrifices himself to let us get away, right? Because when Gawain showed up, she just killed almost every soldier that was there because we had rebel knights there as well. Not a part of Salisbury, but a part of another group. That Percival, the Camelot knight himself, like the servant, runs, right? And so we're gonna have to go and run into him at some point. But we basically get off by the skin of our teeth, right? And Oberon shows up because he was a little late, and because we didn't tell him that we were leaving, right? We were just like, let's go do this right now and all this stuff, blah 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 blah, right? Oberon shows up with a horse, the horse servant in this game. I forgot his name, but in this one, they managed to get away, and now they're fugitives on the run. They can't go back to Salisbury, right? So the next spot is a fragment, another fragment with Mash, Kira Light, right? And so we continue with their journey where she's still traveling with the three goblins and they're just talking. They're talking about the world, all this stuff. And she's just a super nice girl. She's always been like this, but now that she doesn't have her memories, she's just really kind. Her inherent values are still with her, right? She didn't forget those. And so she basically activates her Camelot armor since she's still Galahad's demi-servant. Or, well, Galahad is still her demi-servant. And the goblins basically find that, yo, she's kind of like a knight. She's kind of as strong as a fairy knight as well. They go to bring her to Sheffield, right? To sell her off and get some money. Winky, which is the smart one, doesn't wants to because he wants his money and then he wants to dip. And then the two brothers don't want to because they really like her. That's the end of the fragment. Now we go to Gloucester. This is another town, and this one's basically like, hey, no fighting. The Lord herself wants this town to be a town of no fighting, just pure and utter aesthetic and just auctioning and buying stuff, right? It's like a market. And so we get there, and the main goal is we hear that Mash is here, right? Or at the very least, that someone with an iron weapon is here. And since she has an iron shield, we're like, oh shoot, she's here. So they basically find a way to get an auction ticket through Oberon, and we beat another one of the Fairy Knights or Tamlin Knights, whichever you prefer, in Tristan. Tristan is a very snooty, uptight, and pampered girl. One of my friends told me that like, hey, give her a chance, because he's seen some of this and he really likes her. So he says to trust the process and just believe that her development will be good. but I will say I don't like her. As of right now, I don't like her. We meet her. She doesn't know that Artoria is the child of prophecy, but we go to the auction and Oberon has 77 million counterfeit dollars. So we're gonna use that, but he has to use them last because if they find out that they're counterfeit, he's gonna go to prison. One thing about Oberon, he's actually a king of a certain part of this Britain because he's a servant. He's not born from Britain. He is a servant, right? And so he got here like 2 months earlier, probably summoned by the counterforce or something. And he's just been surveying, learning, scouting, doing everything he possibly can in Britain, right? It's just super cute moments going on between Oberon and Artoria. Oberon likes to tease her, kind of like Merlin, and Artoria just can't handle it, so she gets a little frustrated. She's super competitive. Da Vinci and Fujimaru are just there having a good time. Their little group that they have built together is so cute. I love it, man. It's so awesome. And then you have the fragment stuff going on as well. It's so cute because I love the goblins and how they treat Mash. First, they're scum, right? Like they don't seem like anything, but then you get to learn that they're just people trying to survive. They're not evil people. It's just that they have to do what they have to do to live, you know? It's their skins or it's yours, you know? The auction's going on. We bid for this person, right? We find out that the person isn't Mash, but it's Senji Muramasa. Not the Shimosa Senji Muramasa, but the alter ego foreign god Senji Muramasa. We bid for him because even though this isn't the Senji Muramasa that we knew, it's still somebody that we know we care for. We're gonna help them out, right? We're gonna get them out of this pickle. And so we bid for them, and Artoria just bids right away all the money that we have, all the counterfeit money that we have. And she even starts bidding some important things, right? And Tristan comes in and she bids as well. The leader of what's it called of Gloucester comes in and she's just like, yo, all right, to settle this debate, you two both use magic, so we'll have a magic battle. You versus her, Tristan versus Artoria, right? They duel in the battle, and Tristan has magic items, but they don't work. And so Artoria wins because she actually knows magic, right? She frees Muramasa, and now Murian, who is the leader of Gloucester, is like, "Yo, I gotta talk to you guys for a second. Come with me, right?" And so we go to her house and we meet her. She looks like BB a little bit, and so basically she's just like, "Yo, I'm happy to help you guys out. You know, it is what it is, right?" We're like, "Oh, that's so cool. That's nice." And then she's like, "But I have one important thing to mention. I have one benefactor here, right?" We see it's Konya Skanya. She's still here, right? And she changed her outfit again. She's kind of like Bulma in Dragon Ball. But regardless, we hate her. We just don't like her because you gotta remember, before Lostbelt 1 in the prologue, she killed everybody. Like, she literally killed everybody or excuse me, in Chaldea. The only people left were Fujimaru, Mash, Gordolf, Holmes, and Da Vinci's homunculus. So it stands to reason that we hate her. Oberon, who doesn't even know who she is just basically like, yeah, I don't want to do business with you anymore, Murian. You can keep that. The reason is because he hates Konyaskaya. Like, he doesn't know why, but he genuinely just cannot stand Konyaskaya. She's evil, right? And so he's just like, don't you ever speak to me. Don't you ever talk to me, look at me, even think about me. I hate you. And I don't want no part of you, right? And so we cut, and it basically is just like, yeah, Murian just told us to get out. Well, she's not going to cooperate with us. Da Vinci and Oberon basically both knew Miriam was never going to be our ally. She was just trying to use us. So even if we allied with her, we would have had to fight her at some point. So it's better off that we just don't ally with her, especially if she has Konya Skanya. So they leave Gloucester and they go to Oberon's domain, the one that I was talking about. It's called the Forest of Wales, actually. Like Walen. But regardless, then we go to Fragment 3, which is in Sheffield, right? And Sheffield, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, it's a long one because it's multi-part, so it's gonna be a long one. But Sheffield, we basically get introduced to the city, and we learn about the leader Bogart. He used to be the leader of Norwich before he got kicked out. Excuse me, Spriggan, and now he's trying to cause a revolt against Morgan and save Norwich, right? So he has a bunch of people that follow him, and the goblins sell mash. So, sorry to cut in again, but the goblins sell Mash to Lord Bogart so that she can become his new wife, right? Because she seems strong enough to be able to handle him and be her equal, right? He has had like 60 wives at this point, and with certain events that happen in the future, it's kind of sad thinking about it, about the other previous woman that used to be married to him and why they're not here anymore. Bogart isn't a good person. Bogart has some redeeming qualities, but he is in no way, shape, or form a good person or a hero. He is a gray character for sure, to say the least. They sell her off. Winky goes his own separate ways. He leaves the two brothers in Sheffield. They decide to stay here because of a niece who's now known as Mash because we find out that her name is literally on the shield. A wolf has been following her this whole time to protect her. We'll find out who that is later. But regardless, Sheffield is basically just like Mash becoming a queen. We get to meet Habitrot, who is a servant. She makes dresses, she makes wedding dresses, she makes clothes, right? And so she made clothes for Mash to basically be Bogart's wife, and all she really has to do is just do nothing, right? But she doesn't want to do anything or do nothing because she wants to help out the citizens of Sheffield, right? Mash is a good queen. She's a proactive queen and she wants to help people, right? She's strong too. So she can do anything that Bogart can basically. And she has the black barrel, the gun that they use for Olympus. You'll see how that comes into play later. But regardless, she's helping out and there's this one scene where Bogart basically this is kind of explicit, so like be warned. If you don't want to hear it, then like skip like maybe like 1 to 2 minutes ahead. I'll try my best to get over it as quickly as possible. But Bogart basically tries to get on Mash. He tries to come onto Mash and not realizing what he's trying to do because it's, for lack of better words, he's basically trying to have sex with her, right? And Mash, not realizing what's happening, instinctually, she knocks him off and sends him flying through the castle doors, sending him all the way to the ground. And the soldiers think that, oh, is there an invasion going on? What's happening? And he's like, nothing. Don't tell a word, a soul about what's happening. And her being a nice soul, a gentle, kind soul, she's like, yo, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then Bogart's just basically bad mouthing her all the time, not understanding why she's so loyal to him. Because he expects all the women that he loves with or loves to hate him because he's a terrible person. He is genuinely a terrible person. But we're basically just seeing how Sheffield is being developed and growing and how this is going to be a spot where revolution happens, right? Because Bogart is trying to have that happen. And we're just learning a lot more lore. And I can't stress this enough. Sheffield is so expansive, right? Like all these all of this Lostbelt is just so expansive because there's so much lore and history. And one thing that Da Vinci mentioned is that this isn't like Lost Boats where human history diverges at a certain point. This just this isn't human history. This isn't human history at all. From what we can tell, this isn't the same world that we lived in, where it just diverged at a certain point. No, this is completely different. This is why this world has so much deep and developed history in it because it's not our own. It has to be a different one. So by this point in the story, we're back with the main cast, and we're just leaving Gloucester, and Muramasa's with us now. Muramasa stays because he's loyal to Artoria, because she basically saved him, and he likes the way that he likes the cut of her jib, basically, right? And so on the way, we see a couple of fairies who try to mug one or mug some people, right? Or at least that's what we think, right? But Artoria, being the good soul that she is, goes to help him because she doesn't think it's a scam. They were actually right. It wasn't a scam, and so they help him out and they go to Wales. They're having a good time there. They're chilling, and lo and behold, we actually meet Gareth, like the knight from Camelot, and she's summoned here as a servant basically. And so the reason why she wants to join Artoria is because she saw what she did in Gloucester, and she's like, "Yo, I even saw what you did with the people that were in danger. You're a genuinely good person. You are the child of prophecy. So I'm going to believe in you, right? I'm going to trust in you, and I want to follow you." And so everybody's just like, "Yeah, shoot, by all means, you know." Like Artoria has imposter syndrome, so she feels like, "Hey, maybe I shouldn't be the one." But like Everybody's there to support her, and they all believe in her because they know she's the child of prophecy. There's nobody else who it could be. Oberon's just basically talking to them, like learning about everything that's going on in the world. Norwick is getting worse and worse. Sheffield is holding a rebellion. The rebels themselves are just chilling. Morgan's chilling. Salisbury is hostile. We can't go there anymore. Gloucester, we can't go there anymore. We only have like a few spots that we can go, right? And the goal that we decide to end up on is Norwich because Norwich has a giant dark cloud over it, and it's gonna be a calamity, right? A calamity is basically like happens once every 100 years, and a great calamity happens once every or not decade, every millennia, right? They decide that because the prophecy basically foretold it, we're going to Norwich so that Artoria could do something and she could be proved that she's the child of prophecy basically. So they get ready to head off to Norwich, right? So they also had to decide to head to Norwich because they think that Mash is there as well. They think that she would be there because they hear that another child of prophecy is there and they think that it's Mash, right? Because they already have Muramasa. Somebody else with an iron weapon can't be him, right? They start heading off to Norwich, right? We go to fragment number 4, Sheffield Part 2. And this is where things just get wild, right? Because we learn about what's going to happen to Sheffield. Bogart wants to start a war with the Queen, right? And we have Winky, the goblin that left. He goes to Barrel Gut, who he's one of the cryptors, right? And at this point, Krishtari is dead. Ophelia is dead. The ancestor, I forgot her name, Akita, she's dead. Peperoncino isn't dead, so we can leave him out of that. And Kadak isn't dead. We have him captured in Chaldea. So Beryl and David are the only cryptors left that have their own lost belts, right? Beryl is Morgan's master. So Winky sells that information to Beryl, and he's killed for it because Beryl's a no good scumbag, right? Like he's actually horrible. So we cut back to Sheffield because now the imminent war is going to happen whether Bogart's ready or not. And so Tristan, Gawain, and Lancelot are all there, right? And with a whole army ready to take down Sheffield. They're ready to kill everybody or to have everybody surrender, right? And so Bogart and Mash notice this, and Bogart's just basically like, yo, leave, go, do not stay here. And he tells all the citizens, like, yo, do not leave. We can handle this. This is our war to win, even if there's 3 fairy knights, right? Because morale is low because of that. Sheffield is an all out war zone, right? So Bogart grabs hold of the black barrel that Mash had. Since she doesn't know what it is and she hates using it, she left it there. And Bogart picked it up and it destroyed a good portion of the castle. And the way that the writers describe the pure chaos and pandemonium that was left in its wake was genuinely horrifying. It was so well written. Oh my gosh, my eyes were glued to the screen for every paragraph. It was awesome. But it's not enough to defeat the knights that are coming after him. Tristan and Beryl go to attack Bogart. Mash is helping out a bunch of citizens, basically trying to help them evacuate because Sheffield is gonna fall. There's no way that it isn't, right? She's helping them evacuate, but then she notices that Bogart is being attacked, right, and that he might die. So even though he hasn't been the best person, she still goes to help him, right? Because that's still her husband. And Habitrout follows her because she's basically just attached to Mash at this point. They're one and the same. She goes to help him out. Beryl, knowing who Mash is, no matter if she has her memories or not, that she's always going to help somebody no matter who they are. He throws Bogart off of the building and she goes to rescue her. And Beryl and Tristan leave because, like, yeah, we don't need to do anything. Sheffield's gonna fall. We don't need to kill her because Morgan also said, like, don't kill her. So they leave. Sheffield's gonna die. Like, it's done. It's cooked. Mash and Bogart manage to escape. Everybody's escaping as best as they can. We find out that the wolf is actually so we find out that the White Wolves that have been following MASH for all of the fragments so far are actually connected to Crewcaster. They aren't him. I did have a misunderstanding with that, so that's why I'm re-recording this section. He helps defend against Lancelot. Mash manages to escape with Bogart. The two goblins manage to let them escape because they stood at the gate that was gonna lock Sheffield in and out of places. So they had to sacrifice themselves for them to get out, right? So God earns their souls to the good for the two good goblin brothers. They were the two best people in this story. Everybody escaped Sheffield, as many civilians and ferries that they could get out. And Bogart, since he's heavily injured, like super, super heavily injured, he's on his deathbed. He's talking to Mash and all of them, and everybody's just mourning the loss of Bogart. He wasn't a good person, but sometimes he could be, you know? Sometimes he could be. But regardless, that's the end of Sheffield. Yeah, Mash is going to Norwich, and she's basically just going to continue her prophecy, right? To free Norwich from the calamity that's about to ensue, right? We're basically on pace to meet up with her, right? We show up to Norwich, and this is the final part of the story for right now, where we show up and we actually see her. She's being trotted around as the child of prophecy, and Spriggan using this as his own way to capitalize on that. He's just basically like, yeah, we're gonna keep the child of prophecy in our castle. She wants to help, but she can't. So yeah, we're gonna keep her there to keep her safe. Fujimaru goes up to Mash, like pure desperation, and just talks to her, right? Mash, it's you. And she doesn't recognize him because her memories still haven't come back. And so she's crying, even though she doesn't know why. But deep down, she knows. They take her away. He can't do anything about it. But Oberon and him had a talk all the way back in Wales where it's like, what are you going to do if she doesn't get her memory back? And he's like, I don't know. But I'm going to try regardless. One of the people in Norwich, he's known as the Count, calls in for Da Vinci and Fujimaru, and then we find out the Count is actually Count Pepperone, aka Count Pepperoncino, and he's the fourth cryptor, aka Lostbelt 4, right? And so we're talking to him. We trust him dearly because he's helped us out time and time again. Pepperoncino is just basically like, hey, let's let me help you out. My enemy is Beryl. Even though we think that he's doing it for Kirshdaria, we agree that like yeah, he's doing it for Beryl as well, like to kill Beryl, right? They come to another truce, another temporary alliance. They wait a day. They slept. They had a good time. All this stuff, and calamity striking Norwich, right? We all go out and we're ready to just fight because the Moors are attacking Muramasa, Gareth, Oberon, Da Vinci, and Artoria are all fighting. Fujimaru's trying his best, but he just can't keep up with the servant energy. We're trying, but then we see Mash and Habitat go out and fight, and so now we get a second wind. And Fujimaru goes to help Mash, and she goes to defend Norwich because the calamity is gonna crash into it and destroy it, right? Fujimaru goes to Mash last second, gives her as much energy as he can, and they defend Norwich because she uses Lord of Camelot, right? Round of Camelot. They stand the test. They win. They defend Norwich, and now Norwich is in their good graces wholeheartedly, right? The Child of Prophecy defended Norwich. At least that's what they see, right? Artoria didn't do much, and she believes that she isn't the Child of Prophecy if Mash did that by herself with Fujimaru's help. We quell her doubts. Like, listen, you're the Child of Prophecy. No matter what happens, you'll have your time to shine. Even if it was not now, we're here because you are the Child of Prophecy. So don't worry. So Mash regains her memories because of that act of courage from Fujimaru, and they're so happy together. They all come together. They're having a good time, and Morgan uses her water mirror to take Mash away and bring her to Camelot. And as soon as we get her, we lose her. So now we're just sitting here like, wow, great, she's gone. Again, great. That's basically where the story ends. We're reeling from what happened in Norwich, and Spriggan is just basically like, yeah, I'll help you guys out. You guys helped me in Norwich. You guys defended Norwich. How can I not be grateful? They come to an agreement that even though Norwich has a bell, they're not gonna ring it. If they were, that would basically be a declaration of war towards Morgan, and they're not ready for that yet. And Morgan actually invites them to the castle. So that's where we're going to pick up next time. The invitation towards Morgan's castle. And that's where the story ends for part one. This story so far is amazing. Genuinely amazing. I just can't wait to continue part two. The characters are so fun and lovable. Like, Oberon has been such a great surprise, and my theory is that I don't think he's all that he's cut out to be. Not like envy, but in the sense like I have a feeling he's not a good guy. I don't know why. I don't know why, but something just rubs me wrong about Oberon. If he isn't, then that's even better because I don't want him to be a bad guy. That's just my thoughts on it right now, right? Altoria, she's great. She meshes really well with the characters. For being the substitute for Mash for a good part of the story, she really fleshed out and became her own character. So I enjoy that. Like, I'm not saying that to degrade Artoria or to put Mash on a pedestal. It's just that we don't have Mash. She's the closest thing that we have to a servant that can help us out. You have Gareth and Muramasa. They're really great as well. They're just super cute. Muramasa, we saw him in Shimosa, and I thought he was great there, but here he's even better. You have Da Vinci and Fujimaru who really mesh well with each other and also just the characters because they have so much time to spend with them. And we have 50 days, 45 to 50 days until the Lost Belt collapses. So we're really running out of time. Like we probably have like 10 to 15 days left because we spent a lot of time. I mean, Fujimaru was unconscious for like 10 days, and if I had to guess, we probably have like 10 to 15 days spent just wandering Britain and all that, and we're not even done yet, right? The music is great, the story is great, the story beats are amazing. Like I can't stress this enough. There's only half of the story, but man, it's just it's phenomenal. It's truly phenomenal. I have more to say about it, but I'll leave that for the rest of the video. Hey, so this is me talking to you guys from the future because I recorded this like 3 weeks ago. So I just completed Act 2 and I'm gonna go record that, but I'm gonna release Act 1 as its own video because Act 2 is way too long to be included into this video. This video is already almost 40 minutes long. And then there's an Act 3 coming July 10th, so it's just like, yeah, this video is not gonna be one whole thing. So this is gonna come out first, then the other two. So I'm sorry for the confusion, but yeah, be excited for that. I'm super excited. There's so much to talk about. But yeah, I'll see you guys in part 2. How's it going, everybody? My name is Infamous Isaac, and welcome to part 2 for Lost Belt 6, where I'm going to cover Act 2. And let me state this, I knew this act was long, but I did not think it was going to be this long when I started working on the video, in terms of time and effort put into it, and just overall the video length. This video though took a lot more out of me than I thought it actually would. I had a blast doing it, but it is something new to me because of how long it actually is. So by the time I finished, I was just burnt out. So if you enjoyed, please consider liking and subscribing. If you don't, that's perfectly fine too. The fact that you clicked on the video or had any interest in it means a lot more than you would know. But without further ado, I introduce to all of you lovely viewers, Lost Belt 6, Act 2. Enjoy. So, to get into the non-spoilers for Act 2 of Lost Belt 6, I am going to be comparing it a little bit, and I'm not going to spoil what happens in Act 1, but I am going to be drawing comparisons to both of them, right? With the way that I feel, at least. If I had to describe Act 1 for people that didn't see that video with no spoilers, basically, it's the story drawing you in with some history, some detail, and overall fun and enjoyable characters. And I love that, right? It's what made me fall in love with Atlantis. But what separates Lost Belt 6 from stories like Atlantis or any other Lost Belt is that this Lost Belt has time to build and develop the world and the story and the characters and overall what's going on in this situation. So if Lost Belt 6 is just a puzzle set, Act 1 is building the border of the puzzle with maybe one or two pieces in the middle, right? You don't know where they go. Act 2 is giving you the middle, filling out almost the entirety of it, with Act 3 hopefully filling out the rest of it. So, to expand on Act 2 more specifically, it has the history, the characters, and overall, a lot of the knowledge that you need to have an almost full understanding of the story. So Act 1 is the mystery, while Act 2 is the solution. And if you didn't know, if you don't play the game, or if you haven't gotten to Lost Belt 6 yet, there's actually like a little tab that shows the table of contents for each age in history for Lost Belt 6. The game really promotes you learning and remembering what is going on in this Lost Belt so you can truly understand the story that all the people who wrote this tried to build. It's actually impressive how much everybody wrote for this story. It's not about the character amount or the word count, it's literally just the depth of the story to the point where this could be its own story. And what I mean by that is because this is a mobile gacha game, the production value is inherently lower to fit a phone's needs. But this could genuinely be passed off as a visual novel if you port it and redesign it to fit console or computer needs. And that's based off of the merit of how well written this story actually is. And so, to describe my final thoughts on Lostbelt 6 Act 2, I can basically come to the consensus that this just only amplifies Act 1 and solidifies the fact that Lostbelt 6 is just the best story content that we've ever gotten in this game. My complaints with Act 2 really boil down to the info dumping in some sections and just how long it is in general. It has nothing to do with the lore itself because the lore is perfectly fine. It's just in certain points, the way that it's presented to me is just too much to digest, and I need to take a break from it. But in my opinion, on a positive note, that's a testament to how good the story is because my complaints issue more on the presentation of that story instead of the story itself, because the story to me is perfectly fine. So overall, if I had to give Act 2 a rating, it would definitely be a 9 out of 10. Well, it's not a 9.5 material like Act 1 is. This story is still amazing. The characters are great. The lore was amazing. The world building. And overall, just how it progressed and how the story is going to end in the next act is just so engaging. But now we're going to move on to the spoilers for Lostbelt 6 Act 2. So, as per usual, know that I'm going to be going into spoiler details for Lostbelt 6 Act 2. This one is a hefty one, and I highly recommend not watching this video if you haven't played or read or seen anything on Lostbelt 6 entirely. A lot of information in this Lostbelt hinges on you not having read anything on it, you know? Maybe having knowledge on who these characters are in real history, but not for the Lostbelt itself. So if you are going in completely blind, then keep that as a virtue. That is a blessing. But without further ado, let me begin. Act 2 begins with a prologue, basically reintroducing us to the world of Fairy Britain. And the way that this is done is by having the Stormbirder crew read off the Venji's reports that she's been giving them throughout our journey so far. You have Holmes and you have Gordoff reading them in their own ways. Gordoff reading it aloud to the crew. And this sparks conversation about who Morgan Le Fay really is, right? Because Nemo, or Captain, doesn't know her lore. And so Holmes goes into the details about her, basically talking about the three variations of her. The human version, Morgan herself. You have Vivian, who's the Lady of the Lake. And then you have Morgan Le Fay, who's the Fairy Britain Queen, created from Britain itself, like Vortigern, right? And it's just going, in a sense, talking about all these versions, the history surrounding her actual lore, and just overall, is there a good version of her? Or is it all just bad and stuff like that? Mounier has a comment like, with the Lion King all the way back in Camelot Singularity 6, and now this in Lostbelt 6, it's like, man, we just have so much Camelot Arthurian lore in Chaldea, bro. Next thing you know, we're about to see Albion. Nemo doesn't know who Albion is, and to be fair, I don't either. I don't know anything about Arthurian lore. So Holmes just basically explains that Albion is one of the last dragons to exist in history, right? And just basically giving all the details about him. They're talking about the logistics of how long the expedition crew really has left to finish this Lostbelt. Because remember, they're still on a timer. The whole thing is that the world is gonna end if Lostbelt 6 implodes. And so they're basically saying how they had 28 days under their belts and that they have 18 days in reality as an estimation to finish this Lostbelt without going over the limit by too much. But they are under a time crunch is what Holmes is trying to say. But regardless, that moves us on to Camelot, back with the expedition crew. So we're back with the main crew after the aftermath of Norwick and everything. Mash is gone, and now they're reeling, trying to figure out what they're gonna do next, right? And since they got an invitation to Camelot from Queen Morgan herself, they just plan on going there next. Pepe and Oberon stay, deciding that they're gonna try to go after Spriggan, and Retrobit is gonna stay as well. If he goes there and he's assisting the Child of Prophecy, it's not gonna look good on her. And we also learned from Oberon himself that there were extra verses to the prophecy that Angel predicted all the way back in like the era of the fairy. But he deemed them unimportant, so he never mentioned them, and also they contradicted it by saving Norwick when Norwick was predicted to be destroyed. Gawain and a bunch of knights from Camelot show up and they're just like, alright, well, if you're all ready to go, then let's get out of here. And the people that are going are Fujimaru, Da Vinci, Artoria, Gareth, Muramasa, and Habitrot. Those are all the people. So they get in the carriages and they leave. And on their way, it basically predicted that it's going to take 2 days to get there. Lancelot shows up because a bunch of Moors are attacking the carriages on their way. We need the help. Queen Morgan herself sent her, so she helps, she destroys all the Moors, and then as quick as she came, she leaves. They camp out, and Fujimaru goes to talk to Gawain herself, and they're just having a chat about Gawain and her history, how she became a fairy knight, how she's a Fang Clan member, how she got the name of like the Black Dog, overall how she just eats the strong and everything. Learning more about her personality, just her as a fairy overall, and as she has a man, she has a husband, right? And how she's taking care of him. But overall, they have a nice chat, but she advises him to go back to his camp because they need to get as much rest as they can to get to Camelot, right? They wake up, they go to Camelot the next day. Here we get introduced to the city itself. And if you remember all the way back in Jerusalem, back when Camelot was being made, it looks a lot different, but obviously because the Lion King was the one that made that one, while Morgan made this one. So I just like the contrast and ideals overall. But on the other side, across from Camelot, we see the Northern Fairy clan, the King clan, with Knocknaria residing over it, right? And she's doing a training exercise where all the fairies are just standing watch, looking over at Camelot. And Gawain is just like, yeah, she's doing this as a display of power, showing that like if at any moment she's ready for war. But the only reason that Knocknaria doesn't get in trouble for that action is because she just dismisses it as a training exercise, so Morgan doesn't just immediately come after her. But people know that, like, yeah, at any moment she will be ready to rebel against Queen Morgan. Everybody gets ready to go visit the queen, but the only people allowed are Fujimaru, Artoria, and Da Vinci because she's our advisor. So Habitrot, Muramasa, and Gareth aren't allowed to go in. We go in, we have a meeting with the queen, and she's basically just saying like, yeah, alright, you guys are my ops. I'm not going to have peace talks with you guys. You are invited guests, so you will not be harmed as long as you're guests in my kingdom. And if you decide to go ring the bells, Artoria, you will be viewed as an enemy and no longer a guest. It is, by all definitions, a declaration of war if you ring those bells. And Morgan's basically like, alright, besides that, ask me any questions that you want, but be careful because if you say anything that I don't like, you will not be viewed as guest anymore. And we basically ask her, alright, like, we're here because the world's ending and that this Lostbelt is going to collapse. And she's basically like, yeah, she describes that that was all planned, that Fairy Britain is going to end and it's going to be remade. She doesn't care about the fairies, she only cares about the land because fairies can always be reborn. She's not doing it out of cruelness, she's doing it because she's completely indifferent about fairies. She just wants her land to remain, you know? And since she's making it a world itself, that's how she's planning on doing it. She won't give them Rongo Miniad, and they're gonna have to pry it out of her dead hands if they want to have it. And to get her off the throne, they're gonna have to fight her, basically. So one more thing is that they want to know where Mash is. She tells them that she's safe, she's perfectly fine, but she won't tell them where she's at. So now they're asked to leave. And Barrow's there as well, basically saying that, like, yeah, she's my servant and all that, that she's going to kill them. But Morgan's like, yeah, no, you're not going to do that. So they leave, and then we see a scene with Morgan after everybody leaves. She's talking to the guy that looks like Romani that we saw in Lost Boat 5, right? And he's just basically like, congratulations on your magical achievements because I know nobody will give you the credit that you deserve. And what he's saying is true because she did all of this in 2,000 years. She's a literal magical anomaly. And you'll see more of that as the story progresses because Morgan literally is just like a well of magical energy. she tells him to leave because she feels like it's sarcasm. And then she also sees the foreign entity that watches over from the foreign god. And she's like, listen, if you're not going to say anything, then leave because I don't want you here. You don't do anything. Then we see Oberon and Regerbit. They come back and they're here to retrieve us after the meeting. And now we're heading off to Londinium. So it's been several hours since I recorded the last section that you just heard, since I'm recording this in segments. And man, I was just here spacing out to Minecraft music for a little bit, bro. Like, but regardless, now we're leaving Camelot, and the first thing that we see is a chocolate field, and this is close to the northern fairy territory. So everybody's eating this chocolate except for Muramasa and Gareth. And there we see northern fairies come and attack us, and then they take us away to Knockneria's camp, right? The girl that we saw all the way back in Camelot, staring down the Camelot forces. And we find out that she was actually acquainted with Artoria because all the way back in Gloucester 5 years ago, they were both there for a contest on beauty. And since Murian usually she's the judge, Artoria didn't get really far. She didn't even get into the qualifying rounds. While Knockneria herself, she got into the finals. And so Knockneria sees Artoria and she's like, dang, why didn't you make it to the finals? Yo, what happened? And then she's just like, I don't know, I didn't make it to the qualifying. I guess I'm just not pretty. And then she's like, listen, those judges were unfair. They judged on external beauty and not the beauty of living your life the way that you want to. You should have been in the qualifying. And then after getting a further look at her, she's like, you know what? Maybe not. I think my intuition was wrong. But after that, they start talking about each other. For the next 2 to 3 days, they just become really good friends and rivals. And so that's why they know each other now in the present. But Knocknaria can't look past the treasonous act of eating from the chocolate field because chocolate is really important commodity here in the northern area. She insults Artoria's group and she's like, you should have gotten better people to surround yourself with. You know, you haven't changed. And Artoria's like, listen, these people are better than you know. All right. If anything, I bet they could beat your soldiers handedly. And she's like, all right, bet. Let's make it a wager then. If you beat me, then you get to go free. But if not, I keep Fujimaru. And that's basically how we get set free because we win. Regardless, they leave because Nocnaria has some business to take care of with some refugees and everything from Sheffield. And everybody decides, all right, let's go to Londinium because Oberon hints at going there. We might find something there. We go on our way there, we camp out for a little bit, and Gareth decides to get some water. And on her way there, she meets a couple of Moors and she's defenseless, so she's trying her best to fight them, but she can't do anything. And then Percival, proper human history Percival, who grew up here, so kind of like Gareth, comes out of nowhere and he defends her, right? And he's the leader of the Round Table army. So he's like, I'm so sorry that you got attacked like that, but here, let me give you some tips on your spear work, right? And so she's just super surprised and brings him over to Artoria. And they're all just like, oh, shoot, all right, bet then let's go over to Londinium even faster. So they get there and they meet all these types of people, the army, everybody, right? And then they get taken to the war room where they see a painting of Cernunnos, the god that created Fairy Britain. And they're talking about it. Da Vinci comes up with the idea that if Cernunnos is here, who is a god, then they did have the idea of worshipping gods at some point in this history. So the fact that it doesn't exist now is really odd. But after talking about the painting and investigating a little bit on it, they go to the war room and they're talking about what they're going to do next. And they land on Norwich, right? Because Spriggan is having ideas revolting against Morgan and her army. So everybody's planning on what they should do, and they decide that because of what Spriggan's trying to do, they're gonna go over to Norwich. And since Pepe is there as well, he's getting people to help the Round Table army. We're gonna have 400 people from the Round Table and 400 people from Pepe that he's rounded up. And Artorio's like, you know what? I don't like the sound of this, but there is a bell over at Norwich, so we might as well get this over with now. Everybody prepares to go over to Norwich. So after leaving Londinium, we go over to Norwich, right? And this is where Percival drops some lore tidbits about his history, where we learn that he was adopted by one of the fairies and he was raised in Salisbury with a bunch of other human children. And he's just a normal human. So as he was given a loving and caring home, he didn't really hate any fairies growing up. And that never extended to anybody else, right? But as he grew up, he became a soldier and he went to Camelot because of a tournament. And he was a finalist, so he got to meet Queen Morgan. But the way that she acted, it made him turn away from Camelot and basically realize like, yo, no, she's not right. She's not fit to be ruler. So we're gonna have an army, right? We're gonna rebel against Queen Morgan. And so this is where the Round Table army started. And then Oberon later comes around and is like, yo, listen, you aren't going to get anywhere if you're having a band of misfits like this, bro. Let me help you out. Let me organize a bigger group and then we can really get going. So this is why Oberon is kind of seen as like a de facto leader, but Oberon gives leadership to Percival. As they make it to Norwich, though, the forces split up into two. You have Artoria and Muramasa, and you have Habitrot and Gareth in their own things. Da Vinci and Fujimaru are in their own garrison, basically helping out both groups And Pepe, he's just like, all right, listen, I'm gonna help you guys out with these troops, right? We're gonna siege Spriggan. They managed to open the gate. They managed to get into his forces, and there's Camelot forces there as well, so they're taking care of them. But none of Spriggan's forces are there. And once we meet him, we see him at the bell. He's like, congratulations, you know, you made it here. And Artoria asks him what his motives are. He's basically just like, hey, at the end of the day, I didn't do anything. My forces didn't do anything. And if you kill me, then that means that you're going to make an enemy of Norwich because I'm still the de facto leader of this place. I bring in a lot of revenue and profit and do a lot for these people. And because I didn't go against you guys, that means that we were neutral. So I didn't rebel against Queen Morgan. This bell is completely unguarded, you can have it. Knowing this, Artoria goes to ring the bell, despite the fact that this is a declaration of war towards Morgan. Spriggan is a calculating, devious guy, you know, and the reason is because he's actually a human from proper human history who got transferred over to this fairy Britain, and he's a changeling now. He got cosmetic surgery done so he looks like a fairy, and just goes through a bunch of things to make sure that he looks like one, right? But in reality, he doesn't care about Fairy Britain, nor the fairies, nor even himself. But regardless, that's the end of Norwich to Morgan, and she sends Woodrose to go to Londinium, one of the clan heads, and you have Lancelot and Gawain head to Wales, Oberon's forest. We get fragment number 5, where we continue with Mash, seeing where she disappeared to. All of this is to say that we find out she got sent back into the past 2,400 years ago, all the way back when Asek and Habitrot, which seems to be Totoro, or Tetrot, I think is how you pronounce it. I don't know. She's with them now, and she's literally living out the history that we were learning about in the present. She got sent that far back by Morgan. We're gonna learn more about that in the future. So as we head into another section, we're on a carriage back to Londinium after going to Norwich, having all that stuff go down. We're going back there, and Artoria has a dream, right? And she's dreaming about her proper human history self, who was a king up until she died because of Mordred and Morgan's scheming. So she's dreaming, and she's just thinking about how can you live a life like that that just seems so hollow. I like Artoria's reaction to this dream because it shows that she's still so uncertain about the Child of Prophecy and why she has to go on this journey or why she should even go on this journey. For the most part, she's been doing this because she has to. You gotta remember, this has been hoisted onto her since birth, so she doesn't know any reason why except I just have to do it. It shows how conflicted she is in her heart. But she wakes up, they're still on the carriage, and they're talking about how horses could exist in Britain. And apparently, if there were multiple horses and fairies like that, fairies just would exist to be born, which doesn't really make sense to me. I don't get how that works. But if you understand, let me know in the comments below because that part kind of confused me. And even recording it now still doesn't really make sense to me. Fujimaru and Oberon look over at Artoria and they're wondering like what she's thinking about. But Oberon thinks that it's her wrestling with the fact that Morgan may be a good leader, besides the fact that she's a tyrant in some aspects. And that is a thing that I did want to talk about because you have Oberon's experience, right, where he saw all the bugs and all the fairies who were outcasted by Morgan because she hates bugs. Morgan, by all accounts and purposes, is a tyrant, but you look at the good that she's done for Fairy Britain as well, like protecting them from calamities, giving them places to stay, and overall, while she only cares about the land and she hates the fairies, she still cared for them, you know? And not in like a, oh, I like you guys, more like, you guys are residents of Fairy Britain, so I will protect you, because this is my kingdom, I am the ruler. And so instead of making her just a bad Lostbelt king, and not bad like in, oh, terribly written, no, I mean bad as in she's evil, they made her a gray character. Kinoko Nasu made her a gray one. Where people in Fairy Britain think that her sins way more, but they still don't take for granted the fact that she's helped them out. At the very least on the surface level, because fairies still manage to take for granted what she's done for them. And while this pilgrimage is meant to overthrow Morgan, that doesn't mean that we don't witness what she's done, how cracked she really is as a Lostbelt king, and how she was able to just change this Lostbelt so quickly. Bugs that Morgan casted out, they went over to the Welsh forest, and when Oberon was summoned, there was around the same time that Beryl showed up, and when he summoned Morgan. And so they protected him, they covered him with light because he was just basically like an infant at this point. Not physically, but that man didn't have much, right? And so to repay them, he's taking care of them and he's going to overthrow Morgan. But as we continue on with our journey, we go to Londinium after seeing that Woodwos's forces are gonna attack. And we got word of this, so when we came back, we just basically like, yeah, we're gonna defend Londinium for as long as we can. We're going to fight Woodwos because we can't hold out a defense for long. It'll only be 10 days. And so their plans are basically like, yeah, Norwich is gonna send some forces, but later we find out that like fairies are still scared of going over there because Artoria only rang one bell in Norwich. It's not enough to motivate them to come over yet. The group is just here defending Londinium as best as they can while they wait to see what Woodrose does, because at the end of the day, it's kind of like a war of attrition. While Londinium has less forces, they still have the upper hand because they're being sieged. Like, hey, whatever they do, we can always counter, as long as we're vigilant. Meanwhile, on Woodrose's side, see him talking to Beryl and Tristan how Morgan ordered him not to attack. He's furious, but then he realizes, like, alright, fine, if the queen wants it, then I won't attack. Beryl, obviously being scum, he's like, dang, I really thought he was going to attack. Alright, well, if that's the case, then stay here for a little bit, and Tristan agrees too. They're going to stay here for a bit. After like a day or two of them waiting in Londinium, they get word from people that like, yo, Gawain and Lancelot are going to attack the Welsh forest because they know that the Welsh forest is allied with the Round Table Army because Oberon is there, right? And so Oberon, ready to just go and brawl right now, he forgets to realize that we're gonna help him out too. So Fujimaru and everybody's like, yeah, let's go help out. And so we send some of our forces over there to the Welsh forest to stop Gawain and Lancelot. So as we rush over to the Forest of Wales, we meet Gawain. We see her burning down the forest and everything. Lancelot's being a part of it, and we split our forces, right? So Percival, Gareth, and Muramasa are in one group. Meanwhile, Artoria, Fujimaru, Oberon, and Da Vinci are in another. Nobody was left behind in Londinium. We just left the soldiers that were already there, so none of the important characters. This fight boils down to us beating Gawain, Artoria revealing her name because of Hector, one of the heroes from the Age of Asec, and her name is Bargus, so I can finally say her name. I've been cutting out all the times I've said her name to not spoil people, but man, it's hard to when you have the servant card and it just says it right there. We haven't revealed Lancelot's name yet, but that will come soon, so don't worry. Even after we reveal her name, it doesn't matter. Bargus is still just as strong, if not stronger than what she was before, so we have an even more difficult time. But we managed to fell her. She's not dead, but we managed to convince her basically like, yo, listen, we're not here to destroy Fairy Britain. We know you care about this place. We know you care about the fairies, but we're not here to destroy it. We're here to save it because we didn't even need to destroy it regardless. So we weren't going to anyways. And Da Vinci's just trying her best to convince her like, yo, we're not the bad guys here in terms of like fighting against Morgan. Because you know that Morgan, her justice goes against fairies, their very existence. Because she's going to use the calamities to basically destroy them, right? Fairies aren't Morgan's priority. And so we managed to tell Barkus, just give her the truth, or at the very least, the truth of what we're trying to do. Because it's not like we're trying to play mind games with her. We're legit telling her, like, this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to do it. It's just that Morgan herself declared us her enemy. So you had to fight us. One of Morgan's soldiers who came along the way, his name is Portions. He tried to attack Fujimaru, but Bargus protected him because Fujimaru tried to protect her. And so he's basically like, treason, I'm gonna go tell her, kill him now if you are loyal. And she's like, nah, I'm not gonna kill him. And so he leaves, basically trying to snitch on her. And Bargus is like, well, the mission's done, so I'm gonna head back. And so she leaves. And Oberon's just here, depressed, like really depressed, because the forest is dead. All the people in it are dead, and all he can do is just mourn. And so we leave him to be. Muramasa helps him bury the people, but Artoria's like, look, there's no point. They're gonna go back, and so does Gareth. Like, she says the same thing. And it varies when they die, their bodies don't disappear like in proper human history. It's really just they turn into the ground itself. Britain is built on the bodies of fairies. So, as we move on to Fragment 6, we go back to MASH, her being 2,000 years back into the past, and we have her, meet Asek in the last fragment. So here, we're just talking to her, learning more about what's going on in this current time, and basically, it's right before Uther's coronation, the king, the human king, who's going to lead change in Fairy Britain, right? And ASEC makes it clear from the very beginning, like, yo, do not tell us about your time. Because if you want to be able to go back to your future, you cannot tell us a single thing, or at the very least, a minimum. You're gonna forget your memories if you tell us. Well, the future isn't going to change because the High Queen made sure of that. It doesn't matter. Like, you still need to be sure that you don't tell us anything. So Masha's like, all right, after like having told them a little bit, and she still messes up from time to time. But basically, this fragment is them telling us about the current events going on in Fairy Britain, like us beating Ector, us beating Habitrat, or also known as Todorot, and again ASEC. And then we go down to the pit. We're gonna investigate it because ASEC is just like, we have somebody here who can help us investigate because nobody knows what's going down there. And the weirdest part about it is that nobody questions why it's even here. Why is there a giant hole in Fairy Britain that nobody goes to? Why is it even here? The fairies are just scared of it. They don't understand it, and so they don't even want to investigate it. But ASEC is different, and she wants to go see what's going on. Like, why is it here? Her and Mash prepare to go down there, and that's the end of the fragment. So as we're leaving the Welsh Forest, we go over to Salisbury to regroup basically, and since Percival is the leader of the Round Table Army, he can't stay there because that would cause allegiance issues with Morgan and Aurora, since Aurora doesn't align with any of their values and they're just completely at their core different from each other. He can't stay there. We're here with everybody else who was left, right? They go to the bar where Da Vinci was working at before we caught up with her, and then she was basically like, yeah, go ahead and ring the bell. You stopped the calamity in Norwich from happening, so let's keep true to our word. So we ring it and then we leave. We head back to Londinium and we hear from Aurora like in their own thing where it's basically like, all right, so how are we gonna move forward? And Aurora's just basically like, until Artoria rings all six of the bells, we're gonna stay neutral as possible. If the Londinium forces lose the battle with Woodwose, she's gonna take in refugees from that battle, but she's not going to help them. She still has to stay neutral, right? And Coral, her assistant, she's basically like, but isn't that gonna endanger Salisbury? And she's like, at the end of the day, these are my ideals. She's gonna stick to them. And so they're all basically just acting in the interest of Salisbury, but it doesn't mean that their interests don't mean helping people. That's her core values at the end of the day. So as we head back to Londinium now, after having a little sparring session with Oberon, which I thought was crazy unfair, because you either had to choose with I'm gonna side with Oberon if Fujimaru, if I'm not gonna side with him if you don't want to. But no matter what you choose, you still have to play as Oberon. So it's like, dog, what? Hold on, so what does it even matter? Hold on. We go back to Londinium. There's a lot of Norwich forces here, and we're basically just regrouping, trying to figure out what we're gonna do, right? And Pepe's here, and he's just like, yo, let's talk, let's have a discussion. And so Fujimaru, Percival, and a couple other people join us in the war room talks to talk about how they're gonna go forward, right? And Pepe's basically just talking about how, like, hey, I'm here to kill Barrow, right? And since Fujimaru's here, he's gonna want to come over here. So I'm gonna have you guys there, and my goal is just to kill him, alright? We'll help you guys out, but I am a selfish person, so that's what I'm going to do. And Pepe, I wanna mention, always looks down on himself because of his history that we learned about in Lostbelt 4, where he's actually a Japanese person who was in a clan that was just filled with a bunch of killers, and they just tried to make the perfect specimens type people. They would get stronger through the generations, and Pepe was one of them, right? Itachi'd his clan, and now he just views himself as a killer, no different from Barrow. But Barrow is sadistic. Pepe does it out of his own morals and volitions, right? While he's not proud of them, he still acts on them. During our conversation with Pepe, they basically start divulging the details behind what this Lost Boat really is. Since the Lost Boat tree has been gone for a very long time, this world isn't Lost Boat anymore. It's literally a lost world, basically. It has the strength to compete with proper human history because it has an established history that goes past way over like 10,000 years compared to other Lost Boats, which didn't have a lot of time to really be there. Or if they did, it was nowhere near as long as this one because the Lost Boat tree was still there. Morgan cut the Lost Boat tree. It had to have been like the first year of her rule, or at least that's what Da Vinci hypothesizes, right? And so Pepe having an idea is just basically like, what if you guys took the fairies from this Lost Belt and brought them over to proper human history? The fairies, just like the Lost Belt, have proper human strength in terms of like, they're stable enough to exist in our world since they're not tied to the Lost Belt anymore. This is Morgan's world, basically. Fujimaru and Da Vinci thinking about like, hey, like we genuinely could do that and that'd be kind of sick. And Artoria is put with the position like, Alright, so do you want to leave now and you can live with us, living out your days in proper human history along with other humans and stuff like that? Or do you want to fight Morgan at the cost of it coming with your life and stuff like that, like still taking that risk? And Percival's even like, listen, whatever you choose to do, I'm just happy that you helped us out. We're still gonna fight Morgan, but regardless of what you do, I'm thankful for what you've done. And Artorias just basically like, I'm gonna stick and fight with the Round Table Army at this point because we come too far. I'm gonna commit. And everybody's like, alright, well, that's the decision then. And Percival's like, alright, well, that aside, I'm gonna go train up the new recruits that we got. We're gonna have exclusive groups, decide where we're gonna go attack and all that. We're gonna plan out the attack, right? The night before the decisive battle, excuse me. Percival leaves and that leaves everybody else here in the room. After that talk in the war table room, we have some discussions with other people like Fujimaru and Habitat. Basically just telling Fujimaru like, yo, you're gonna be reunited with Mash, don't worry. Artoria is the key to that, so we're gonna make sure that she comes back and you don't die until that point. Like Habitat swears on it. Meanwhile, Muramasa and Artoria are talking. Muramasa basically just saying like, yo, you aren't cut out for fighting, you're tired, blah 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 blah. And Artoria just suppressing what she really feels and just saying like, yo, listen, I'm fine, don't worry about it. We also get to see Gareth and Percival training each other, helping each other out. And Gareth and how her impact on the children, they really taken a liking to her. So it's kind of boosting morale in the troops. Da Vinci and Fujimaru have a conversation to themselves, right, after everything's said and done. And it's about the humans in this Lost Belt, how they're different from proper human history. Da Vinci basically tells Fujimaru, like, the humans in this Lost Belt can't go back to proper human history. They can't go there because humans here were made from one single person. Like, they're clones of that original human being, right? And because the Lost Belt tree was there while they were being made, and no original human has been made since then, they're literally all just different variations of that same person's DNA. No human from this Lost Belt could come over there. Because while new fairies were made after the Lost Belt tree was cut down, no new human has existed ever since that one human's DNA was cloned and just rearranged every time to make new humans. Humans can't reproduce because of that, and they have limited lifespans, so literally they're treated like animals, like slaves because of that. So only the fairies can come over to proper human history, not the humans. And this is where the lore just enhances the story so much more. Because you would be thinking, like, alright, why can't the fairies and the humans come on the store border? But you wouldn't know the reason why. And the fact that it's a clone, only DNA running through all the humans in this Lost Belt is so unique and creative. And overall, it's just so dark. Like, the very concept of it, like other concepts in this Lost Belt, are just like, man, I needed a break to just really think about what I just read. She also mentions the Celtic god Hernunos, who they have a picture of them in this Lost Belt, and so she's interested because they don't have ideas of religion in this Lost Belt, at least the current day. So the fact that Hernunos is here and the fact that they were worshiping him like a god makes it seem like there was a sense of religion here at some point. But Hernunos isn't here, or at the very least hasn't been for a long time, so they wonder where he is. And that will become very important later on. So we cut away to Camelot, where Vargas is there now, Tristan is there, and Lancelot is there. They're talking to Morgan and all that, and all the fairies there, and the council, and all the other people are there as well. And they're basically just trying to decide Vargas's sentence. And Morgan just decides, like, yo, you're gonna be confined to your area, Manchester, and you may be called upon, but that's basically where you're gonna be because you betrayed me. So we basically are stripping away your title in a sense, since her title was already stripped away by Artoria because she revealed her name. Lancelot defends Vargas, at least from Tristan, because Lancelot believes she did a great job no matter what. She did do the job that she was sent to do, even if she was defeated by Artoria. But regardless, some people suggest, like, why doesn't Vargas just fight for us instead, right? Help Woodrose and everything. And Morgan's too prideful to let that happen. It doesn't matter. Woodrose is good enough to fight by himself. He doesn't need it. She has complete trust in Woodrose. Krista was making fun of Vargas, but again, Lancelot defended her, and so she goes after the meeting to talk to Beryl, and Beryl's talking to somebody, getting information on what's going on in the round table, like, battle. Tristan walks in, he starts slobbering, bro, literally glazing her. It's disgusting how much beat writing he was doing, but I can see why. I don't even know. I don't like it, bro. I literally just don't like Beryl no matter what. And not even like he's written badly. It's just that the story makes me not want to like him no matter what. I think that's a good thing. While they're talking, no, Tristan's just basically like, oh yeah, no, isn't Mother great? Like she's awesome. He's like, yeah, you know, like she's a top rating witch and all that stuff. Like she's the best of the best, the strongest he's ever seen. And Tristan's wondering about Fujimaru, like how strong is he, you know, like with the servants and everything. And he's just like, Fujimaru's top rate, like definitely a great master because of Kirstaria, the battle with him, and how he was able to beat him not just off of good servants and IQ alone. Fujimaru got that off of his own merit. And I really like that because even Barrow can acknowledge that the battle between Kirstaria was not just a fluke, even though I would have thought it was because that fight was really hard. So it really just makes me sad that Kirstaria wasn't the final Lostbelt guy. And not like I don't think David should be, because David is fire and I really can't wait to see what he does. But it just makes me so sad remembering what happened to Kirstaria, because his story was one of the best. Like, if anything, probably the best up to this point for the cryptors. Lostbelt 5 was carried by Kirstaria's story, at the very least for me, in terms of Olympus, because I love Atlantis. The two end that conversation with us ending the section, going on to the Londinium defense battle. So as we reach the new section, this is the battle for Londinium. And so we have two forces. We have Percival's force going behind Woodrose's camp to attack him, and we have our force, Londinium, defending against the push that Woodrose is trying to make, right? And so it basically leads to just a bunch of skirmishes going on. We have Gareth, where we see her defending some of the children that she met throughout the time she spent in Londinium, where they even made some armor for her, and that's how she got to like her other ascension and everything. We basically just get to see her take the role of knight so seriously, the way that Percival does, and just act like one, right? Defending the weak, protecting what she can, and overall just fighting against the strong. And it was really nice, you know. I like the development that Gareth gets here. But we see Muramasa, Fujimaru, and Da Vinci fighting against some of the soldiers, while Artoria has her incantations cast across the battlefield, since at the end of the day she is a support. She's trying to reach as many as she can, but she can't reach everybody. While Percival goes behind Woodrose's group and he starts attacking him, Woodrose is just wondering where in the world are Morgan's support, you know, where are they? And Percival's just like, I don't know, I didn't see any. So Woodrose is just like, alright, bet, whatever. I'm gonna kill you then. Because Woodrose was actually there raising Percival for a little bit before he got adopted by the woman, right? Because he was being trained and everything. So they have some connection. But Percival starts attacking him, and he uses the sphere selection to try and hurt Woodrose, because Woodrose is an array, aka a werewolf, but only wolf. So he has like the human stature, but he's still a wolf at the end of the day. And Percival's attack doesn't even face him, because the Fang clan are just some of the strongest fairies out there, period. They're the defenders of Britain, of Fairy Britain. So that attack did nothing to him, and now they're just wondering, what do we do? And Woodrose kills everybody because Gareth got a vision. And she's been getting visions for a long time now throughout the story of her seeing everybody either die or something bad happen. She even used it in the Wales Forest. So as soon as Gareth sees this vision, she makes haste over to where Woodrose and Percival are fighting, as well as us going over there as well right before she showed up. So she stabs into Woodrose's skin, and this time it actually penetrates while the spear selection didn't before. So now it sets up for Percival to stab at him, damaging Woodrose enough to send him packing over to the River of Tears. And so they manage to beat him, and they send him running to the River of Tears, where Percival executes him there, where Percival learns, like, yeah, I was the one that helped raise you, you know. And Percival knows this, you know. He's like, yeah, you know, I appreciate everything that you've done for me, and I'm not doing this out of malice. So he apologizes to his father, and he's just like, he gets it done, you know, he kills him. And he goes back to the army, and everybody celebrates, like, yeah, we did it. We took out Woodrose's army. We lost 20% of our soldiers, but we cooked. And what we see is Barrow and Tristan talking to Woodrose, basically like, yo, listen, you're not dead, because he got up and it wasn't enough to kill him, but it was definitely enough to severely wound him, right? And so they're talking to him, and Barrow basically takes a part of Woodrose and eats it because he's a witch, you know, he uses witchcraft and all that. And Tristan helps put him down, like, as in, like, restrain him. And Barrow let Tristan use some magecraft that he learned from his grandmother. The thing that he didn't tell her is that it rots the person's soul. So Tristan feels really icky when using that magecraft, right? But after that, we see everybody else's opinion on what's going on, what happened with Woodrose, because his defeat is spreading like wildfire. So we see Aurora's perspective on it, and she's actually talking to somebody from Morgan's army. Then we see Murray and Konyaskanya talking as well, how Konyaskanya is going to go somewhere where Albion's corpse is, and the reason she knows about it is because Oberon sold that information to her, and we'll learn more about that later. And then we also get to see Nocnaria's perspective and how she's proud of Artoria, but also that she's happy to have a rival that can rival her like that. Aurora is actually defending Woodrose and all that, even though we know, like, yeah, Aurora basically manipulated Woodrose from some flashbacks that we saw. He feels like he was betrayed after he got severely wounded because he saw Retrobit, aka Aurora's horse, with the Round Table army. So it's like, what's going on? He's trying to piece things together, but he just dismisses it as like, oh, maybe the horse defected is all. Maybe Aurora doesn't know what's going on. On top of that, Morgan didn't send troops for him. So he's just like in a constant state of confusion and pain right now. But regardless, that's the end of Londinium attack. We won, and now we're gonna go to Gloucester because we got an invitation from Murian. So as we move on to Fragment 7 after the Battle of Londinium, I want to mention that all the fragments that we've read so far have been really cute, really interesting, really sad, or really informative to the world that we live in, right? Fragment 7 is no different. We learned so much about this world and its history from the people that are currently living in it 2,000 years ago. It starts off with Mash talking to Asek, learning more about the world that she's currently in, where again, Uther's going to be coronated in a couple months. And while they're trying to investigate the pit down below, Asek is telling Mash, like, yeah, so the reason why people think that I've been reincarnated continuously isn't because it actually happens. I've just been sleeping whenever I'm not there, whenever I'm not needed. Because people hate me, like people really do not like me because after the calamities are done and I save them, they think that I'm the one that's gonna be the next, because I'm the fairy of paradise. So they want to kill me if anything. But she believes that Uther is going to be the one that issues change, and that changes the need for her to leave because humans and fairies are going to coexist, basically. She also mentions what I mentioned earlier, where fairies are the groundwork for Britain. And what she means by that is basically every time fairies fight, they don't decompose and disappear, or they don't disappear like fairies do, period. They just stay there, and then they become one with the land. So Fairy Britain got bigger because all the fairies that were fighting, because all the wars that were going on, because there were a bunch of wars happening before the Age of the Queen. So all those bodies and all those fairy lives lost expanded Britain and made it what it is today. So Britain is literally built on a mound of dead bodies. It's dark. It's definitely dark, and Lostbelt 6 has its fair share of just dark tones because every Lostbelt has, since it's meant to be a play on humanity where things diverted, and in reality, most of them aren't better than what humanity is. In some aspects, there are, but in other times, they aren't. And Lost World 6 is no different. So, as Asek is telling Mash all this stuff, they decide to call it for a night, and then Mash is talking to Habitrar, or at least the one that's here. And it turns out she doesn't know how to sew yet, and she has terrible memories, so she forgets all the instructions on how to sew. So Mash is just like, alright, how about you keep a diary then? But Habitat doesn't know how to write. And so Mash is just like, hey, I don't know how to write either, in terms of your language at least, so why don't we learn together? And at a certain point, it'll become muscle memory, so you won't even have to remember how to do it, you'll just instinctually do it. And when I keep calling her Habitra, I mean like this is Totoro. I call her that because they literally look the exact same. And I have a theory on what she's going on. But regardless, don't worry about her. This is Totoro in the fragments. In the present day, it's Habitron. As the next day rolls around, though, they get to the pit and they have Mash descend by having Totoro hold on to Mash, and Asek is there with magic in case that if anything goes bad. Mash gets down after an hour of descending to like 7,000 meters. There's ash coming up, it's billowing up, and things aren't looking too good, right? The only reason she's breathing right now is because of Galahad's protection in her spirit core. As she gets down to 7,400 though, she passes out, and they tell Totoro like, yo, we need to pull her up now. And so Asek and all of them pull her back up, and then they bring her to Salisbury because she was unconscious for mad long. So they managed to cure the curse that was put on her by the thing down there, and we know it's her nose down there. Asek is basically just like, well, if it's not solved then, surely it'll be solved in the future, even though you told us like it's not solved in the future. At some point we'll act to make sure that things go good because that's a threat down there, like that's a curse. So we need to make sure that it's done, it's gone after the coronation. And that's the end of Fragment 7. We move on now to Gloucester, Part 2. So as I mentioned earlier before Fragment 7, Murian invited Artoria and Fujimaru to her ball. This ball is prestigious because it's been held before, and Murian, taking this time to hold another ball, especially this one of this grandeur, decides to invite as many people as she can, whether it's the Queen, her knights, Fujimaru, the Child of Prophecy, Aurora, people like that, they're not the only ones that are going to be there. So they head off from Londinium because it's literally going to be held the same day, so they have to rush over to Gloucester, right? As they get to Gloucester, they only have two invitations and one extended invitation for a guest. So it's going to be Artoria, Muramasa, Fujimaru, and Da Vinci. Oberon's going to sneak in because he's a master of disguise and deception. Or he's going to snuggle up with somebody who doesn't have somebody to come with them, right? That leaves Gareth and Habitrot to go off to Pepe's shop since this is Gloucester. They're going to go over there and just have a nice time, chill out. Meanwhile, Percival and Redrabit are going to wait outside of Gloucester because they wouldn't be allowed in there anyways. They weren't invited. So they go into the ball. Artoria has reservations, but they convince her to go in. And here we see a bunch of guests, right? We see Bargust, we see Aurora with a knight with white hair, which sounds familiar, wink wink. And we have Beryl and Tristan, right? And then Miriam's gonna show up late, so they don't worry about her not yet. What we learn about this ball is that it's actually a reality marble because the inside is a lot bigger than the outside, so Da Vinci deduces that. But as we're talking, we see a bunch of guests, and Aurora's attendant, Coral, comes up to them and she's just like, yo, listen, people aren't going to be able to tell that it's you guys if they haven't met you yet because it's a sort of magic that Miriam put over the ball. So the only people that recognize you are going to come talk to you, right? And then Da Vinci's like, hey, listen, I know that you like humans, don't you? And then Coral's like, don't you dare insult me like that ever again. I'm going to kill you. And then she leaves. But in reality, I kind of think so too because she told Fujimaru, like, yeah, listen, you can't talk to people like that here. Because while I'm used to it, and so is Aurora and other people that may have met you, other fairies that don't know you will not be used to that. So just be careful, alright? As like a warning. And that's why Da Vinci says it. The white haired lady comes up, and it turns out to be Fairy Knight Lancelot. She came with Aurora, right? And they have a history together. And so she's talking to everybody here, asking what's going on. So one thing I found interesting about Lancelot is that her personality is just so different from what I would have thought it was gonna be, and that goes for all of them except for Tristan. Tristan always gave me that like I'm kind of mean vibe. Vargas herself, I thought was just gonna be like a warrior type character where she just has no regard for other people and just wants to fight. But in reality, she's pretty stalwart and acts like a knight, even though her title is the Black Dog. She still cares for the fairies, and even though she eats the strong, she does protect the weak. She has that survival of the fittest, but instead of feasting on the weak, she protects them and feasts only on the strong. Lancelot herself, though, does enjoy fighting, but she serves Morgan at the end of the day, right? So she does follow orders. She is a stalwart soldier, but she doesn't have the same morals as Bargus does, right? Lancelot cares only about her people and her people alone, so just remember that going forward. As Lancelot is talking to all of them, she maintains a fold over her face so that people don't recognize her. Our group doesn't realize it's her until she removes it, right? And then she's talking to all of them, asking if they made Coral mad because Da Vinci was just prodding and poking at her to see her morals and everything and all that. Coral actually revealed that Lancelot is the second in command to Aurora, at least in terms of like kinship and all that. So when Lancelot shows up, she always goes second in command as like her attendant for Aurora. And then Coral gives up her spot, even though Coral hates her, like completely despises her, quote unquote says, even though she's a creature from mud. She asks Fujimaru how Percival is, and Fujimaru's just like, yeah, he's fine, he's doing good. They all wonder, why would you ask that? Why do you care? And she says, because Percival's her sibling, right? And then she leaves, and that's it. And everybody's just like, but why would you say that? What would you tell us? Since we are the enemy, we are your ops. Because she doesn't see them as a threat, or because she generally just cares about Percival, and she's kind of dense besides that sense. So everybody's just like, listen, Percival didn't tell us that for a reason, so we're not going to ask him about it or tell him anything about it because he wanted to keep that a secret for a reason, right? Especially if it's going to affect army morale. So we're just going to leave that there. They're not colluding with each other. It doesn't matter. Vargas is at this ball as well, and she asked if they could see her. So everybody leaves after Lancelot leaves and goes to Vargas. As they talk to Vargas, she's basically just wondering what's their goal here, because even though she heard it in the Forest of Wales, she still wants to understand really what's going on. And so Da Vinci takes the time to explain to her the Lost Belts, why they're here, and how the battle between Britain and proper human history is really a world-to-world battle. The humans themselves aren't here to just kill all the fairies and then leave. At the end of the day, they're trying their best to survive, and if it means that they can save lives in the process, they'll try it as well. They don't mind taking on fairies from Britain if they can. This soothes Bargis's mind though because she just wants to protect the fairies and she wants to discuss more about this topic at her mansion, so she formally invites them to there. Even though she's been relieved of her duties as a fairy knight, she still can fight. It's just that she's not under Morgan's direct orders anymore. So she leaves. Oberon managed to sneak in and he's talking to them. And basically, he's like, if you're gonna go to Bargis's mansion, just know the rules of there, the survival of the fittest type stuff. While Oberon still has his reservations and hatred for Bargis burning down the Welsh forest, he doesn't go against them going towards there. To where the bell is being held, Artoria manages to lockpick it. Here she tells us more about Merlin, this version's Merlin and all that, and that she's being held by Morgan. And also the reason why they would even need to have lockpicking here in the first place. And that's because Morgan made her own form of currency here. People picked it up as a side thing, and Artoria was one of them. They show up, and it turns out that this is the main event, the bell being rung, and Murian played on this. We had Beryl and Tristan show up, along with Fujimaru and Artoria showing up. And Artoria immediately does not want to do this, but Muramasa and Fujimaru both go up and it's like, listen, you gotta do this. I'll be here with you. So it's Fujimaru and her versus those two, right? Artoria has her new dress and she's ready to fight Tristan. Whoever wins, Artoria rings the bell, and if she doesn't, then Tristan just embarrassed her. They fight, Artoria wins. In the process, Tristan's name is revealed to be Babon Sith, the vampire from Darlington, and so they all shame her and they cast her out, and they hate her, because they all hate Tristan before. They would hate her even more if she was Babon Sith. Beryl is just there after Tristan leaves, and he's just like, yo, I mean, you can kill me now. I don't have Tristan here, so it is what it is, right? And Fujimaru is way smarter than that. He's just like, yeah, no, I'm not stupid, Doug. I'm not doing that. And so he's like, all right, smart of you, smart of you. If that's the case, then I'll be waiting in Camelot, Doug. I'll see you there. They both don't feel good about that win because seeing how Tristan was treated just doesn't feel good. And also, this isn't how they really wanted to get it. They would have just wanted to leave and dip after getting it. Miriam now recognizes Artoria as the child of prophecy, so she rang the bell, and while she remains neutral, she will not be helping the Round Table army. She does recognize her, and that's good enough. So now that's 3 bells rang in her journey. Now they're talking with Murian, and basically they're like, yo, so where's Koyaskanya? And she's like, yeah, she's off on business after looking at Oberon, realizing like, yeah, I know your secret. But after all that's said and done, Murian basically just tells him to leave because I recognized you. I'm still going to be neutral, so don't bother me. I'm going to be reading my books now. And so they all leave. Fujimaru, though, asks Oberon where he was the night before the Londonian battle happened. And basically, he was striking up a deal with Koyaskanya the night before in Gloucester. And that deal basically entailed Woodrose's reinforcements from Queen Morgan being dispatched by Koyaskanya, making him think that he was left to die by the Queen. In exchange, Koyaskanya got details on Albion, the last dragon to ever exist in probably human history and in here. So, after learning all that from Oberon, we cut away to Spriggan, the Norwick leader, right? Now we get to learn about his story, his past, and everything like that. So he's actually a fairy from proper human history. And I mentioned that earlier back in the Norwick chapter. So he was actually a Japanese student who snuck aboard the forward exchange ship on the way to Britain during like the 19th century, I think. And on his way there, while the pruning was happening, he switched over to the Fairy Britain by accident. Like, he doesn't know how it happened, and he still doesn't till this day. But because of that, he had to find a way to exist in Fairy Britain. So after 30 years of being a slave, he was now 55 years old, and he found a way to keep living by dissecting fairies and finding a way to slow his aging and using like prosthetic surgery, all this stuff to look like a normal fairy, right? So after working as the Earth Clan's assistant, he managed to kill that Earth Clan and take his name, right? After forming a business of Spriggan and Capless, right? So he managed to take his name. And after that, he's become Spriggan, the leader of Norwick. So after that, he's talking with one of the people, one of the soldiers in Norwick after all this anti-Morgan sentiments have been riling up. The soldier's basically like, who would you want to rule Britain? And Spriggan's like, I would want a queen who's nice, also wicked in her ways in equal amounts. I would want someone so smart but yet so stupid to not realize. And they're like, but I don't think a person like that would be able to defeat Britain, you know? And then Spigen, remembering proper human history, had a queen rule over England. He's like, oh, only a queen will be able to rule, you know? After that, though, we cut away to Tristan, and she's back in New Darlington, and she's just having a tantrum, you know? She's like, yo, listen, if I had Magecraft, I would have been able to win, blah, blah, blah. I'm so salty, type stuff. In a bitter fit of rage, she goes and captures a relic, the garden, and then she's going to use that. I don't know how, but we'll find that out in the later sections. But now we go on to Manchester. Metro! Man. Oh man, am I excited. How's it going, buddy? My name is Infamous Isaac, and welcome to part 2 of Lostbelt 6 Act 2. So the reason I had to split this video up is because I edit on my PS5 using Share Factory because I don't have a computer. And so Share Factory has a limit to how long the videos can be, which is usually an hour. And since last video was 57 minutes long, I couldn't put this video together. So if I had the option to, I would have put Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 into one video. Even though it would have been crazy long, I would have preferred it that way. So unfortunately now they're split into 3 separate videos, but I'll make sure to put the links in the description below so people can have an easy way of managing what they need to watch. So before watching, I am going to go into spoilers immediately for Lostbelt 6 Act 2. So if you haven't watched Act 1 or the first part of this video, then do not watch this. If you have the virtue of being completely blind in terms of the story, then please, I beg you, keep it that way. So without further ado, this is Lostbelt 6 Act 2 Part 2. Hope you all sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So as we begin the Manchester section, we're going over to Manchester. And on the way, we're talking about what we should do after that because it's only really a pit stop to see Barghest and all that. So Da Vinci comes up with a plan like, alright, why don't we go to Orkney instead, right? Because all of the Queen's forces are going to be down near Oxford. Why don't we optimize and take care of the bell that's over there, see what's going on over there? Oberon is against it because Orkney's dangerous. Like, if we go there, we have a chance of just risking it all, you know? And so instead, he wants to mobilize the forces to go north. But everybody's against that because of the fact that Nakanaria would mobilize her forces against them because she sees Artoria as a rival still, not as a partner. And so everybody, even Artoria, shares the same sentiment with Da Vinci, you know, this is the way to go. So Oberon is just like, alright, well shoot, if anything, just be careful then. So Oberon, Percival, and Gareth decide to head back to Londinium. Gareth because she wants to take care of the people there, Percival because he's the leader, and Oberon because he wants to do more scouting and stuff like that. So now all the people that we have left are Da Vinci, Fujimaru, Artoria, Muramasa, and Habitrot. While we're making our way to Manchester, though, Artoria has a dream of her proper human history self again. And this time it's her pulling Caliburn out of the stone, right? Merlin is narrating how she doesn't have to take the weight of the world by herself, but she still did it anyway, and Artoria agrees, because having to carry the burden of that weight by yourself when the world should carry it equally is just, it's not fair. But she still carried it anyways, even though she was betrayed by her knights, ostracized, and left to die. Artoria just can't understand why her other self would do that. And she asks her, like, why? Why would you go through all this? It's just not fair. Nobody deserves to go through that. So why did you? And she's like, if anything, you would know the answer better than most. And then she wakes up, and everybody's heading over to Manchester. One thing I forgot to mention is that Oberon was completely against going to Manchester, like at least for right now. But Da Vinci, after he left, was just like, yeah, let's go to Manchester. We're gonna go to Orkney later. So they go to Manchester. They try to meet Barghest. They get into some trouble with a fairy, but it's just because the war sentiment's building up. They find her in her mansion, and she's just like, yo, let me fight you guys real quick. Only Da Vinci and Fujimaru. And so we managed to beat her so she can gain our trust, and then we have a nice dinner with her, right? And she's talking to us about the human boy that she's taking care of right now named Adonis. And he's super sickly. The man can barely get out of bed. He's bedridden. And she's just like, he wished to meet Fujimaru, but he can't. He has to get his rest. But Barghest really hopes that Fujimaru will come back after Camelot to meet him and see him for the first time, you know? She feels like they'd be great friends. But besides that, Barghest is just talking about them taking some ferries onto the storm border, and Da Vinci's like, yeah, you know, the storm border can handle like 500 ferries, 500 extra people, because at the end of the day, it's meant to be like a Noah's Ark clone type thing, right? And so she's like, no matter what, you know, I'm happy that just some ferries will be able to live, and that she'll pay for her crimes for serving under Morgan after the battle's done, but first she's gonna fight for us. She's gonna go back to Camelot, fight for Queen Morgan, but then as soon as the army shows up, she's gonna fight against Queen Morgan. And Artoria's just like, yeah, but we're not gonna trust you at the gates. And so as they're about to leave, Artoria's just like, man, I don't want to be here no more, man. I want to talk to Vargas. Like, and it's super funny, right? Because we always see Artoria call her Baggy, but we don't know why she does that. They don't know each other on a personal level, but Artoria always does that. I don't know if they have history or not. I really hope they do, because you don't call somebody like that a nickname without knowing them at some point, you know? So I really hope they do. But before they all leave, Vargas asks, like, I just don't understand one thing, and it's about Barrow, right? Why he keeps insisting that Morgan is his servant. And everybody's talking about, like, yeah, it doesn't really make sense, because if he summoned a servant, there would be two Morgans right now. And there hasn't been, you know? No, it's just been left a mystery as to what happened to his servant, or if the fairy Queen Morgan is his servant. What's going on? As everybody is leaving Manchester, we cut away to Barrow and a flashback of him. It's back when he was resurrected by the foreign god, and he was second to be resurrected right after Kirstaria. And Kirstaria basically gave him an objective, right? Do not let the Lostbelt tree blossom in the British Lostbelt. This is your place, right? I'm gonna give it to you. You have to wither it. Can't let him have it. Barrow happily accepts the job and goes over to the British Lostbelt, and he summons Morgan, right, as his servant with using his Sirius light. And then everything that follows afterwards, we'll find out soon, right? But after that, we cut to the present where we see him talking to Morgan, and he's just like, yo, listen, you need to relax a little bit. Like, you gotta just chill. And she's like, I don't need to, you know, like, these guys aren't my enemies. They're not strong enough to be considered opposition, right? And then she also chastises Barrow for not even being able to take care of Babo and Sith. And she's like, she's gonna have to reconsider her master and her husband. So she tells Barrow to go over to New Darlington and just be like, yo, Babo and Sith isn't gonna get any more chances, you know? It's time for her to relax. And that's the end of the Manchester chapter. So, as we move on to fragment number 8, we see Mash and Asek going on to their journey, and it's been 5 months since Mash showed up there, so a lot of things have changed. They've gone around exploring more ruins and caves, trying to find out more if there's like more Hermeos around Britain, or if it's just only in the pit type stuff, and just learning, you know. And as we see more of their journey, we see Totoro becoming better at sewing, you know, gaining more confidence and just believing in her dream more, right? Of wanting to make more brides and seeing them like be sent off, like Asek. She's making Asek's dress, and she's talking to Mash, and she's like, why'd you call me Habitat when you first got here? And Mash is just like, oh, because you just reminded me of someone that I used to know. And then Asek is just like, come on, man, you can't be talking about this stuff on outside of your own time. And so Asek is talking to Mash, and she's just like, you know, thank you for showing up, even though, you know, it wasn't your intention. Like, you really helped out Totoro and just overall have lifted up the mood of this place. No, no worries, you know, like, it wasn't intentional. I just literally, like, showed up at the right place at the right time type stuff. Basically, like, putting the credit off of her and just more like putting it to coincidence. And while Asek is listening, she decides to let the barrier down and just tell Mash the truth. Like, Asek is a wish, you know? Like, at the end of the day, Asek just doesn't care about the fairies anymore because of the way that they treated her. For 3,600 years, she's just taking care of the great calamities every millennia, the normal calamities every 100 years. It's like there's no thanks, there's no care. Like, literally, the fairies just view her as a witch. Like, she comes through, and then they see her as like the next calamity, and she's just been mistreated this whole time. So she's just trying to take care of Britain as best as she can, because it's the only place that can take her, you know. Because Britain doesn't judge her, the fairies do. And Mash is just sad to hear that, because she's helped out so much, but she's got nothing in return. And it's not like she wanted anything in return. She just wanted to be treated normally. But regardless, Asek, after bearing her soul to Mash, is just basically like, at the end of the day, we still have to get you home because you don't belong here. And because if you stay before the turn of the Queen era, then you're going to die, you're going to disappear. So we need to send you there somehow, right? And her plan is basically like, alright, why don't we freeze you? And if nothing happens in Norwich to change what happened, then you'll be there, you'll be fine, you know? One thing I did want to mention is that looking back on this while editing it, there were two mashes in Lost Boat 6 at some point, and that's the beauty of time travel, is that you don't know anything until you understand how it happened. I love time travel stories like this, so it just does a little thing for me in my heart. And that's the end of fragment number 8, as we move on to the Lake District, aka Albion. So Albion starts off with us getting to the Lake District, And we're basically here talking to everybody like, all right, well, how do we digest all the information that we just got from Vargas and stuff like that? How do we find out the mystery behind Beryl and the servant, right? And Artorias is basically like, I don't really want to think about it, like it doesn't matter. And Habitat's like, yeah, at the end of the day, you don't have to fight Morgan. Even if she was or wasn't his servant, she's still cracked out of her mind in terms of strength. So Habitat gives solace to Artoria, like, yo, all you have to do is just ring the bells of pilgrimage, right? At the end of the day, the prophecy doesn't say who beats Morgan. So if you don't beat her, then that's perfectly fine, at least in my eyes. Besides, at the end of the day, my goal is to reunite Matt with Fujimaru. Don't put too much weight on your shoulders because of people's expectations being heavier than what you can carry. And I think that's really good advice for Artoria because at the end of the day, this is a heavy burden. Just like with proper human history, Artoria, how she had to carry the burden of the world. Artoria has to carry the burden of this world, but literally this is the only country that exists. So this might as well be the whole planet. But regardless, this is when a lot of the exposition starts coming in, where Da Vinci starts asking about the history of this world since Habitat has some knowledge of it. She used to dwell around these parts for a little bit. And basically, she starts telling us about the Northern Fairies and the wars that they were involved in. So the Spring War was basically the Northern Fairies before they moved to Ireland and encroaching upon the Southern Fairies because they wished they had more land, right? And the Southern Fairies managed to win because the Southern Fairies just had more numbers. And at the end of the day, the Northern Fairies weren't stronger than the Southern Fairies. So they had to literally move to Ireland and create Ireland entirely. And literally, it was only Maeve herself, the queen before Knocknaria came to be, because the Northern Fairies were literally getting murdered as soon as they spawned into existence. And so Maeve created Ireland and started over again. And this time she brought over some humans because instead of making humans their tools and just only entertainment, she lived alongside humans. So when Knocknaria came back to Fairy Britain, she had humans and fairies ready for war on top of them just being stronger now because they developed. For the War of the Summer, she had a pretty good chance of winning, but Aesic stopped her from encroaching on the south because she would have just killed all of them. And they made a peace treaty, so now Maeve became the leader of the King Clan, and the King Clan is just all Northern Fairies. Da Vinci's also asking about the Rain Clan and the Mirror Clan and what happened to them, and Habitat will explain that later on when we camp and we settle down. They all find a way to settle down in a forest near the Lake District, and so everybody's chilling. Muramas is gathering firewood, Artoria's putting a bounded field, Habitat's just chilling, and Da Vinci's writing a report to the storm border. And so once everybody ate their food, they go back into the lore of this world. So as everybody's dying down, Habitat begins to tell the story, right? And it's basically the story behind Cernanos and how Fairy Britain was created. One thing I forgot to mention was that Orkney in the Lake District that they're going to is near the Lostbelt tree, or at least the ruins of it. If you remember, the Lostbelt tree is cooked. Morgan cooked it herself. So that's why we have no president to really take care of this Lostbelt until Morgan became a threat, declaring war on us. So Habitat begins by talking about how there was a group of fairies that woke up one day and the world was just entirely ocean. They don't know what happened, but the only thing there was just them and ocean. They prayed, for one day, like, hey, we need help. And Hernuno showed up and he was just like this big fluffy guy and he took care of them. In return, they gave him happiness and joy. And so he made Fairy Bread, like the ground for it, at least the very beginning of it, right? And so they prayed and worshipped him. And on top of Hernunos was a human, because they viewed him as an animal type thing. And that human must have been the priestess, at least that's what Da Vinci theorizes. And so through that, they began building the foundations for Britain. And all of these clan heads came to be. And in all the wars that would subsequently come happened and all that. And then we get to the present day, right? And it's just a lot of lore on the creation of this island. And it's not done. There's still a lot more to learn. They wake up the next day and they decide to go to the ruins of Albion and they find a phantom servant and she's one of the last remnants of the Mirror clan, the same clan that made Angel's prophecy. And so she's basically here to deliver a message to the child of prophecy, right? And so now she's found her. It's like, oh shoot, bet my job is almost done. But first, there's actually somebody here who's messing with Albion's body, and I was wondering if you guys could do something about it. And they're like, I mean, I guess we have something to do, but sure, why not? And so they go to check because the Phantom Spear mentions that it's Konya Scania here. And once they get to the remains, they see this is NFF, services, aka her service. And we see Lancelot show up as well to help us take out some Moors. And she's like, I was originally not gonna help you guys, but it's because Moors are taking over my home, so I have to stop them, right? And then the Phantom Servant tells her about Konya, and then Lancelot immediately goes over there, right? And so they start beefing with her. Konya sends out a giant Moorish dragon with the regrets and pain of the Rain clan. We managed to beat it because even though it was a Norwick level calamity, we have Lancelot and she's a Norwick level calamity. Especially since he removed her night name and revealed to us her true name, which I can finally say. I've been cutting it out so many times when I've been editing because I don't want to spoil it. Her name is Melusine, and a lot of people know her by that name in the community. So it's like, man, it's so hard to not to just refer to her like that, man. But regardless, Melusine is her name, right? And afterwards, they're gonna keep referring to her as Lancelot because, out of respect for her, she asks like, "Please don't call me Melusine." And they're like, "All right, fine. We won't call you that because you helped us out." They stop the dragon. They chase off Koyaskanya. They start talking to the Phantom Sphere like, "Oh, shoot, you guys did it. Nice. Now Albion's body won't be desecrated anymore by her because Koyaskanya is trying to capture creatures for her own benefit, right? Because she's planning something, she's scheming. Because at the end of the day, she's a beast. And so right before Lancelot leaves, she manages to injure Koyaskanya fatally. And so Koyaskanya, she's salty, like she's bitter. So she has to run away now. And so Melusine was just like, all right, well, that's enough for me. Yeah, don't tell Percival about this, and I'll be seeing you guys at Camelot, or we're gonna be ops. And basically, we're just learning more about Melusine here before she leaves, where Melusine is a part of Albion. She is Albion's claw, and Albion is the last dragon, right? And Albion's corpse is just here, and Melusine spawned from it, just sewage, right? Just mud. And so when Aurora showed up over there, and she was with Coral, she was like, oh shoot, there's somebody here. And so once she went to go reach for Melusine, Melusine took like actual shape. Because before that, again, she was just mud. And so then she became the most beautiful knight because she was serving under Aurora. She helped train Percival. And after that, she became Morgan's servant, she became Morgan's knight. So the Phantom Servant leaves Artoria with one message, and it's just basically like, the child of prophecy will arrive soon. She arrives and when she dies, and then she dies. And it was kind of sad, I'm not gonna lie. So a couple of things I neglected to mention. Number one, the reason why the Phantom Servant wanted them to help this place out was because if they didn't help it, and Albion's remains were desecrated, then the whole area of this northern area would have just gone back into the ocean. So they literally just could not have that happen because they wouldn't be able to get to Orkney at that point. Another thing is that Melusine, she helped raise Percival, right? And she's just super sad about how he turned out because they're gonna be mortal enemies at this point. She serves Morga while he serves freedom, rebellion. And so she just wonders where things went wrong when he was raising him, hoping that he would be able to be a proper human history person. That's just how the cards were dealt. And after that, Oberon and Koyaskanya went to talk again after she fled. And he's basically just like, hey, listen, I know you're going to leave, and I know you're blaming me for that faulty information. It wasn't faulty, it's just you didn't make good on it. But also, there's still a stronger weapon than Albion here. So if you stay, I promise it will be worth your while. And while you think like, oh shoot, is he scheming against us? He isn't. He's just more using Konya for his own needs, as in helping Chaldea out, right? Because he says it himself that he doesn't want to help an enemy of Chaldea, so he wasn't going to give her all the information. He just gave her enough for it to be suitable for her, right? So she sticks around, and we're going to see her for a little while longer, right? But now we head off to Orkney. But before that, another fragment. So this is the last of the fragments that we're ever going to get in Lostbelt 6. Fragment number 9. And this fragment basically involves Mash and Totoro basically being like, alright, well, shoot, it's time for you to go. Asek is preparing to wither the tree, and she knows that a lot of fairies are going to die because of that. But it's what's best for this place, I guess, right? So Mash just feels some real existential sadness because she can't stay here. But Totoro herself says like, hey, you don't belong here. Like the fact that you showed up at all is an exception. So while I enjoyed it, you do belong in the future. And the fact that Fairy Britain still exists in the future means that we're gonna be fine. So don't worry. And Mash still being sad, Totoro just goes on and be like, yo, listen, I'm gonna make 100 dresses, right? I'm gonna continue my dream, and I'm gonna do it just for you. I'm gonna make a dress so pretty, only for you, that you're gonna love it. So don't worry, I'll keep good on my promise. And so Mash, she smiles at that, and then she goes with Asek, and Asek puts her to sleep, making Mash the first fairy knight. So Totoro, while she's dying, she sprinkles some powder that Grimir gave her, one of the people that Aesek used to know in the fairy calendar, and she basically just petrifies herself because she already seen like 100 wives wet off. She made the dresses, but she couldn't do it for Mash just yet, right? So she still has to live. But at this point, she's almost dead. Like she's blind, she can't talk, she can't move, nothing, right? And so Asek is just exacting her vengeance. This is the war of winter, I think, and things are just going wild. But this marks the end of the fragments and the end of Asek's journey, the failed pilgrimage. This was the first one that laid out the groundwork for Artoria. So just like Albion, Orkney has a lot of exposition, if not more, because of the reveals that happen in it. But regardless, we show up at Orkney, and one of the white wolves that we saw all the way back in Sheffield is here, and it leads us all the way to a boat on a separate little island near Orkney, right? And so who we see there is Grimir, one of the people from Asek's journey, a reincarnated version of Grimir, who was Cuchulainn, right? We saw him before in Sheffield, back when Mash was there, right? And so Kucaster basically just explains, like, yo, I am the same Ku from Fuyuki, and I am also Grimir, you know, I'm a divine spirit. And the reason why is because Odin, I am basically his proxy here, right? And so he's basically explaining, like, yeah, so this is what I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to test if you're the child of prophecy. He tests us, we win. And he's basically, all right, well, here's Mash. We're going to take you to her. And don't ask me about the Fae era because in reality, she knows a lot more than I do. And so he takes us to her and he tells Fujiwara, like, yo, if you touch that ice, she will immediately break free. And then we cut away to Back to the Past, where we see Asek just in complete shambles. Uther was poisoned by fairies that shared the anti-human sentiment, so him trying to be king just didn't sit right with them, right? And so they killed him. And Asek is just sitting there just mourning the loss, right? Like everything that she tries to do is just taken away from her because of these fairies. And she remembers proper human history version of her and how the same thing happened there, but just with humans instead, you know, like there's no difference. So instead, she's going to protect Britain going forward. So as she goes to destroy the Lostbelt tree, she sends Mash into the block of ice, calling her the first fairy knight. And basically, the whole reason is just like, yeah, you are a contradiction. So if anybody finds that out, you're going to be erased and purged by the fairy queen, right? So we have to keep you here, and as long as you don't do anything before the 2019 Norwich incident, then you're perfectly fine. So Mash is just super sad hearing how everything went down because she was there, you know, she was there to live it. And Asek is just like, don't worry, you know, like at the end of the day, I knew I was going to fail, but I still had to try, you know, because this is what my life was destined to be. And so Max is just like thanking her and all that for helping her out. And Asik is just like, don't worry, you know, you really helped me out. And Totoro before this was talking to Mash like, yeah, you really helped fill the hole in her heart. She felt so vapid and devoid of anything before you got here, and then you got here and you helped her out so much. But as Mash is closing up, Asek reveals to her that, hey, Asek is just a pseudonym. My real name is Morgan. And so this is where one of the biggest reveals of the story comes in. High Queen Morgan is Asek the Savior. And that's why she did everything that she did. She hates fairies and doesn't want to protect any of them because of what they did to her as Asek the Savior. So in reality, in her mind, she's justified because what did they do for her, right? And even then, she left the fairies to die, she still protected them. Even though she was using the calamities and all that stuff, she was abusing the fact that the Fae calendar was going to happen no matter what. So she would send the calamities back to the past because she knew it wouldn't change anything in the present. So she just threw it in there willy nilly. That twist was crazy, dog. Actually nutty. But as we go back to the present, we see Fujimaru touch the ice and Mash is set free. So as Mash is freed from the ice, her and Fujimaru immediately hug, and Artoria's like, oh, that's sweet, you know? It's great to see that happen. But she feels kind of like a disconnect between the two now because Fujimaru has a friend like Mash. Artoria feels like she doesn't really have one, but I think it's kind of dumb because the whole time Fujimaru was that friend, it still is. Mash starts telling all of them about the history that she experienced and everything, and then Grimir is like, all right, well, Artoria, what's your side on this, right? Because Mash dropped the bomb that Morgan is Asek, right? And so, since both of them are children of paradise, Artoria gives the mission statement that she was given from birth, right? Go to Britain and make things right, because she was born from Avalon. But the difference between her and Morgan was that Morgan came from Avalon and was put into Orkney and was raised by the Rain Clan's leader, while Artoria came from Avalon and washed up near Ansel, but Ansel threw her back, and the Tentacle clan, the one that she saw before Woodrose burned it down, was the one that raised her. So Da Vinci summarizes everything that she heard from Mash and from Artoria, and basically just comes to the conclusion that Morgan somehow found a way to divert the path that the British Lostbelt was on to a different one, making it a whole different human history. So originally, it wasn't supposed to go to the Queen era. It was supposed to end with the Fae era. There was only supposed to be one era, but Morgan somehow found a way to continue it and then make the Queen era after all the wars happened. And then this is where the Winter War goes on. And so now they just have to find out what Morgan really did to change all that, right? So once they meet her in Camelot, they're gonna see like, all right, this is how it's going to go, right? How did you do it? After everybody gets their bearings, after Habitrot and Mash see each other, she doesn't recognize her, right? And that's one thing I did want to mention. It's like, what is going on with Habitrot? How do you go from Habitrot here, right? And her seeing Mash in Sheffield to Todorot in the past, and then you go back to the present with Habitrot, and then Mash doesn't remember her. It's like, what's going on with her presence? So after the heroes ring the bell, they're at 4 now, and they decide to go to Knocknaria's camp, since it's right next to them, right? And that's the end of Orkney. So we go over to Edinburgh, and here we get Knocknaria because Orkney was in her territory, right? So we have to talk to her about everything like that, and also for the alliance. And so she's just basically like, oh shoot, you guys rang the bell. So Morgan was like, I'm gonna have to kill you guys, but I was gonna wage war against her anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But you did go into my territory, just like how you went into the chocolate fields. And she notices that Oberon and Gareth aren't there. She's sad that Gareth isn't there because she wanted to show her the chocolate factory. But also she was sad that Artoria didn't barge in and they could just fight. Snakknaria recognizes Artoria as an equal ally, so she's like, alright, sure, you can join my alliance and I'll lead it. And then Artoria's like, nah, I'm gonna lead it. And so they have a battle, right? They're gonna have a battle of chocolate proportions. There's gonna be a Maeve chocolate battle. And so basically they have to make chocolate in a day, and whoever wins gets to lead the alliance, right? And then Nakaria adds in, and they also get to keep Fujimaru. It's like, oh, well, okay. So they both prepare, and we have Artoria being helped out by Mash because Fujimaru asked her to. And then you have Nocnaria, who has her attendants and all that. So you have Kokolin and Muramasa and Fujimaru seeing what this place has to offer, while you have Regerbit and Habitrot exploring their own places, right? And they basically come to the conclusion that, like, this place was ran by nobody for 1,500 years. And then she just shows up and she's able to run it again, bro. And the Habitrot mutters under her breath, this might be a calamity. But after seeing some strange things, they go back to where the contest is being held, and Nagnaria actually calls in for Fujimaru to talk to her, and he's telling her about proper human history because she asked, right? And she was like, "Oh, you're not gonna tell me because Da Vinci isn't here, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." So basically, it starts off like this, and then they just go on for an hour, and she's so overwhelmed, like she needs time to process it. But overall, she's very similar to Maeve, so it's like, yeah, he knows what he's doing. After telling her all that, she tells him about how the queen fell and why a human dying meant so much to her, right? It's because that was her lover. Nocnaria herself hates humans, right? She just doesn't see them as useful. So while they have different views on humanity, at the end of the day, she still wants to have them because of the fact that they help out in the factories. But regardless, she's basically like, yo, so get ready because once Artoria loses, all the humans are going to go over here and they're going to be put in a factory where they get good deals and good, like, pension plans, basically. Fujimaru is basically like, nah, yeah, that's not going to happen. Artoria is going to win, so get ready to join our alliance. And then, as he's ready to go to bed, Oberon sneaks into his room and he's like, yo, so how's it going, man? How's everything going? And Fujimaru just tells him, like, yeah, everything happened and all that. And Oberon congratulates him for ringing the bell and all that. They're talking and they're just getting down to brass tacks about, like, Artoria and how she really hides her emotions. Not well, but she hides it. So it's hard to really tell what she's thinking sometimes. But Oberon kind of looks at her like his own daughter in a sense by protecting her as best as he can. By telling her, like, yo, you gotta do this, this, and this for her own well being. But she's so stubborn, so it's hard to do. He's basically just like, Fujimaru, you really have to help her out, bro. Like, she's stupid, but in a loving and caring way. And Fujimaru was like, yeah, we gotta help her out as best as we can because the bells, they have been taking a toll on her. We don't know why, but they have. And so as Oberon goes to leave, Fujimaru asks him if he sees Artoria the same way that he did to Tanya in his Midsummer's Night, I think is what it's called. And again, Oberon always mentions it whenever he brings it up, Titania was a plot device. That wasn't his wife. And what that entails is that because she was a plot device, he can't love her, because she might as well have not existed. She was there to serve a means to an end. We move on to the next day. The battle begins. Alright, the final one for today. And then after that, we'll see how long it takes. I really hope this is not like a 2-hour video because I'm not gonna be able to do that. Oh man, I don't know what's waiting for me at the end of this tunnel, dog, but we just have to wait and see, right? We're just gonna have to wait and see. But regardless, the day has come, the battle has started. So Devil Karen, who is just normal Karen, funnily enough, I actually summoned for her back in Valentine's Day. It was completely on impulse. I don't regret it, but I'm not proud of it. She's the one looking over the battle, and we have two contestants. The two contestants are Nocnaria and her crew that's helping her out, and then we have Artoria with Mash helping her out. Nocnaria's chocolate is Edinburgh made into chocolate form, while Artoria is just a simple heart-shaped chocolate. And it was from Mash because nobody knows what a heart is. Off of sheer design and passion alone, Artoria's chocolate wins, but because she put every ingredient known to man into the chocolate, it becomes sentient and literally starts killing everybody, turning everybody into chocolate like it's Boo. And so they have to fight him and destroy it. And this scene is really funny. Like I ain't gonna lie to you guys, it was definitely the brevity that we needed in the story because it was so tense. So seeing that, it was just funny seeing all the characters have a good time. Really enjoyed it. It reminds me of Act 1. But Artoria is declared the winner after that travesty, and Nocnaria swears that she will join the alliance and that Artoria will lead it. So she will serve her. She won't work with the Round Table Army, but she will work with her. After that whole nonsense, they leave Edinburgh, and they can't work together just yet because they have to ring Oxford's bell. Because if they work together and they declare like yeah we're working together, then Morgan would just bring back all her troops and have them fight Nocnaria herself, you know. So it just wouldn't be a smart decision. So they leave to go to Oxford near Londinium, ready to ring that bell. They don't know where the sixth bell is, so they don't really have any plans on finding it honestly. But as they're on their way back to Oxford, they get jump scared by a couple of human Moors, which is something that we haven't seen yet. The person that orchestrated it was Babo and Sif, and she took one of the relics that Morgan had, and it's called the Lost Will. So you basically get put into it, and it removes your will to do anything, you know, basically killing you in a sense if you decide to give up. And so Babo and Sif uses it on Fujimaru, and Artoria gets sucked in as well because she tries to protect him. So those two are in the Lost Will. So now we are in the Garden of Lost Wills section, where we see Tristan laying down in her room, right, in New Darlington, and her fingers are rotting off, like she's literally rotting to the core. And the reason for that is because of Beryl and the magic that he taught her, because of the witchcraft and all that. And if you remember back when he was fighting wood wolves with her, he basically mentioned to himself like, yeah, I didn't tell her that this would rot her to the core, and he meant that literally. So she's literally rotting her entire body to the point where she doesn't even feel it, and she's just bedridden because of it. And we see a flashback at the start of this section of Tristan and seeing her in New Darlington and just seeing the reception that she gets whenever she's around people, right? Because I mentioned in the last video how Tristan, she's not really likable because of how many people she kills just because she wants to. And it's because that they anger her, right? Because they see people happy and it makes her angry. And also reminds her of her mother, who she loves dearly, but at the same time, she has such a hard time trying to please her. But the way she's trying to please her is by killing people. And we can see from Morgan that Morgan doesn't kill people senselessly. She has reason for it, you know? Like, even though she doesn't care about these fairies, she's not just killing people just to kill people, you know? She's a ruler at the end of the day. If you're gonna be Morgan's successor, you can't just thoughtlessly kill people just because they make you mad, you know? Because that's not the makings of a ruler. That's the makings of a tyrant. But as Tristan is rotting away in her bed, Beryl takes the lost will and he leaves, right? So we cut away to Artoria and Fujimaru where we see them in the Garden of Lost Wills. So Artoria is just like, alright, well, I mean, this stuff doesn't really phase me anymore, so I'm just gonna cut the line or wait for Tristan to lose magical energy because she doesn't have enough to sustain it. And so she sees memories of her past in Tentacle and seeing how they treated her, basically treating her like a slave. And either she could rebel or she could reject, but in reality, the trouble wasn't worth it. So she just did it without asking, right? And then she got a vision of her going to kill Hector, aka her grandpa, And if you remember, Hector was with Asek in the beginning. Like, she cuts the line to the vision. It's like, yeah, I'm just gonna wait for Tristan to stop. And so she sees Fujimaru on their side. She sees all the doubts that they have, like, what if they get replaced with Katak when things are all said and done? All these regrets and guilt and just horrible feelings that are weighing them down, right? But then they see a vision of Romani and they're just like, hey, man, at the end of the day, you gotta live without regrets. You gotta live 100% of the time knowing that you made your decision, completely knowing that you made it and that you're fine with what happens, even if you don't know what's going to happen. You made that choice. And so Fujimaru gets back up and is like, yo, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. And so they get the will to fight back. And the two break out of the lost will because Mash breaks them out of it. And they wake up in a strange area. So once Mash gets everybody out of the Lost Will, we find out that we're in the outskirts of New Darlington in like a secret facility, and Pepe's also there because he helped Mash find this place. What we find out is that Beryl was actually working in this place, making human Moors curse, right? And so that's why we see so many of them here. And when we see him, he explains that we try to escape because the place is set to collapse. And once we get to a certain area, Pepe blocks us out, like he locks us into a room, and he's like, "Listen, there's poison gas. Give me 3 minutes to do this, all right?" And so we make 3 minutes, and then once we get out, we see the place is completely clear. Pepe's there, and he's chilling, and everything's good, right? So we go to the exit, and Beryl is waiting for us there. And what happened was Beryl took Woodrose's spirit by biting into it, right? By taking a piece of it, which is what the scene was when we saw him with Tristan after Woodrose escaped. But Pepe, what turns out was that he actually fought 300 Moors in the ground floor because there was no poison at all. And he used a mystic coat to hide everything, to hide his injuries, because he actually has 300 Moors curse in his body right now on top of a curse that he added himself. And he injected it into Beryl. And so now Beryl's a lot more weakened than he is before. And we managed to beat him, at the very least enough for him to run away. And so we have to run away, leaving Pepe behind. And a couple of things that we learned is Pepe's origin and how Morgan is actually Beryl's servant, right? So we've seen Pepe's story before on how he lived with a clan, how he basically Itachi'd them, right? And then we get to see how he just doesn't really look up to himself, because he thinks he's no better than Beryl, right? But then he remembers all the way back in Lostbelt 4 when David came to see him and he was like, well, I wonder why you came. And then he realizes, like, oh, David, you scoundrel, you came to see me happy. And then we see Beryl and how when he first arrived here after he summoned Morgan, he went to go get some sleep because he was tired, right? So he just slept on the ground. And then Morgan was like, all right, how do we do this, right? Because as soon as she showed up here, she realized, like, yeah, this is Britain, right? And this is a lost belt. So she was going to try to take control of it. And so she managed to find a way to ray shift her memories into the person that was born here 2,000 years ago, which is Asek, right, aka Morgan. She sent those memories back, and all the time now, she just remembers, like, oh, shoot, I'm Morgan, so I'm gonna have to make this country and build it up, right? But because she sent those memories to her past self, the servant Morgan is dead, like completely dead. So the real life Morgan, who is a fairy here, she's a ruler now because of that. And she's found a way to extend her life and just overall rule Britain after the time of Asek. And when Beryl woke up, like for him it hadn't been like probably like a day or something. But when he woke up, the kingdom was there. So the way that time travel works here reminds me a little bit of Steins Gate in a linear sense, because when Morgan Ray shifted her memories to the past, that created a whole new line, and this is where we get Camelot instead of the barren wasteland that was the original Lost Vault 6. And this is where the Steins line of thinking comes in, because when Beryl wakes up and he sees the new Camelot, he thinks that he died. But to me, I see it the way when Okabe changes timelines, his consciousness just gets shifted into that new body that's in that timeline. So that's how I interpret what happened to Beryl, but with Morgan, she's literally a whole new person. The original Morgan is dead, and this Morgan is the Lost Boat Fairy Morgan with her memories. But regardless, Da Vinci and everybody else pick us up, and now we have to go to Oxford because Oberon sent us a letter saying, yo, we conquered Oxford. So the bell is here for you to ring, come back here, and we can get things going. And now we head off to Oxford. Alright, so this section, the last night, is one of the saddest for me, for sure. But basically, we go to Oxford, and it turns out that the Fang Clan basically surrendered. It was a bloodless siege. So since Woodrose is presumably dead to everybody, They didn't know what to do, so as soon as the Round Table army came through, the Fang clan only knew to surrender because they didn't have a figurehead, right? And since the Round Table army doesn't want the Fang clan in the rebel army because there was just too much vitriol and pain, Murian suggested, like, alright, why don't you have them come over here? And everybody's just like, alright, sure. So Murian has all the Fang clan members come over to Gloucester and puts them inside the Ferium, where everything right now seems presumably normal. That is until we see a giant Murian squishing every single one of the Fang clan fairies. And the reason for it is because she's the last remaining member of the Wing clan, and the people that exterminated her clan were the Fang clan. Since this is a reality marvel, this is all happening in her office, and Konya is watching in disappointment because she knows how important the Fang Clan is for defending Britain. So exterminating them is just a bad decision overall by Murian. So Konya can't watch one of her own clients just act so foolishly. So as we go back to Osford, we see that, like, oh shoot, Artoria rung the bell. Now there's only one more left, alright? So we don't know where it is. We don't really need it though. Oberon doesn't think that they do. So it's like, alright, well then let's get all of our forces ready and siege the queen, right? But a soldier comes in and it's like, yo, Londinium is under attack. After Artoria asks, like, where is Gareth? And we cut away to Gareth. So Gareth had just come back from a patrol, and she was just chilling, minding her own business, and then she sees that Londinium was under attack. From the inside, it was rebels who infiltrated after all the recruitment stuff was going on. Gareth, being the knight that she is, goes around trying to help all the children that helped her, all the people that she cared about, and overall just trying to protect Londinium. That's the only line of defense left. And Gareth did a great job. She defended the command room because they were going to burn it down, so all the plans would just be in disarray. And after hearing from a soldier that Artoria made it to Londinium, Gareth is in the command room chilling, just like, oh, finally, I'm so glad I could defend it. But then she passes away because of her injuries, and she's just there when Artoria gets to the command room. And so, Artoria, picking up Gareth's body, she turns her into a bell and rings the final bell, the Bell of Londinium. So as a quick aside, Gareth has had visions of the future ever since like Woodrose and even before that, back in like Wales. So it gives me the inclination to make the assumption of like, oh shoot, what if Gareth is actually a Mirror Clan member? And maybe Gareth in the past with like Grimir and all of them was actually Angel, like that was who she would have been. I can't definitively say anything confidently on the Angel part, but the Mirror Clan part I feel like is true because she would be the last remaining Mirror Clan member after the Phantom Servant disappeared all the way up in Orkney. And since she would be the last one, that would mean that she would basically be the clan leader just like Knocknaria was when she went over to Ireland. And the previous clan leaders were turned into Bells of Pilgrimage, which is in a sense where you can hear the sorrow whenever Artoria rings one. So Gareth being turned into one with this line of thinking makes sense to me. But I think it's a really cool idea if you start thinking about it. And then Oberon gets a message from his little bug friend Blanca, and he's just like, yeah, so Knocknaria's getting ready to move, Aurora's gonna move, but later, Gloucester is staying put, Spriggan is moving to Camelot, and everything is just going down, right? Like, we're all ready. But that's the end of Gareth, and I'm gonna lie to you, like, it hurts so much because I loved Gareth. She was so great in this story. Like, imagine turning a 2-star into such a memorable character in this story. Like, man, it doesn't matter what rank you are in this game. So if you can, take a moment to mourn for Gareth. But for now, we move on to the night before the decisive battle, the second to last section before we move on to the huge battle in Camelot. I'll see you all there. So this one's pretty short, but everybody congregates in the meeting room. They're trying to strategize what they should do, all this type of stuff, and how they're going to plan their attack. And so they all decide, like, alright, well, we don't know what the other people are going to do, so we're just going to plan our attack with Knocknaria. And once that's all planned, Fujiwara leaves and he finds Habitar, and she's basically like, hey, so I'm not going to be there, so take this map of the city so you can know where to go. The place is huge. And he's like, oh, but you're not coming with us? She's like, nah, I can't do it. I don't want to fight Morgan, you know? I got what I wanted, so at this point, I just want to see the end. We cut away to Spriggan infiltrates Babylon's room and basically kidnaps her for future uses, and which is evil, like genuinely scummy. But a lot of the people here are scummy, so it's like, man, at this point, what do you even expect? Cut away to one more person, Woodrose, right? And Woodrose is still alive. He's going through the sewers of Camelot trying to get to Morgan. because Aurora basically told him, like, yo, Morgan never sent you anything. Like, she never sent you reinforcements. Basically manipulated him and fostered this huge walking ball of hatred because Woodrose listens to Aurora. So, of course, he's going to trust her, right? Why would she do anything wrong to him? And it only just solidifies the fact that most of the clan heads, if not all of them, are all pieces of garbage. Uh, Aurora is no different. I thought she was, but nope, she isn't. Everybody here has their own ups and downs, but for the most part, they are all in it for self-interest or preservation of their own clan. So screw all of them and Artoria gang forever. But yeah, that's the end of the night of the decisive battle. Now we move on to the final section of Act 2. Morgan. So we start off Morgan by sieging Camelot, right? We split off our forces to Coquelin and Muramasa in one party fighting Melusine, with us as in like Da Vinci, Fujimaru, Artoria, and Percival fighting Vargas, right? And so we fight her. Knocknaria's group is sieging the gates and all that. And then once we beat Vargas, she's basically like, all right, cool. I'm gonna join you guys now. And so she's with us now. Oberon is having watch over her. And things are just going crazy, man. Like, it's genuinely just pure pandemonium in the streets. So once Melusine realizes that Vargas defected, she goes back and leaves because she realized that she lost. And so all of that, like sieging the main gates of Camelot, is done. But now it's getting to Morgan and actually killing her, right? So our group is tasked with going there, while Noctaria herself is also trying to get there. We actually meet Morgan and we fight her and all that. And we manage to beat her. But then it turns out that was just an illusion. An illusion with the equal amount of power to the main Morgan, and then she spawns a bunch of them. And it turns out she's been clapping our forces the entire time, literally destroying us with clones that are equal in strength. And so we easily get defeated. Oberon takes a shot for Artoria, which presumably kills him. And then we go to the castle. The castle is where things go crazy, right? Because Woodrose shows up after being manipulated by Aurora, and he tries to maul Morgan, and he gets a couple of good hits in. But she stabs him with a dagger, realizing like, yeah, you were manipulated, you were betrayed. I didn't do that. And Woodrose, realizing what he did, he asks for forgiveness. He begs because he realized he messed up. She wasn't the one that hurt him. It was Aurora. So he turns into a Moors and dies. And then he tries to go back to her. And then Spriggan shows up and basically has her mutilated, right? Just beating her to death because he has Babo and Sith hostage, right? Aurora cast a broadcast basically saying like Morgan was the one that orchestrated the downfall of the fairies, which isn't true because this Morgan is from this place. It's just that her memories aren't from here, right? And Aurora, to me, she's lying. Like Aurora actually is a snake. So Morgan is in front of her, the court of fairies that she's been talking to the entire story. They all beat her. They literally murder her. And then they take Babo and Sith, and she prays to Hernunos before she gets thrown into the pit. Which you remember, we saw Hernunos in that pit. And then after everything's said and done, our group finds out that Morgan is dead, a lot of people are dead, and that the coronation for the new queen will be held. They won. That's the end of Act 2. Oh my goodness, that was so long. So, we finally reached the end of Lostbelt 6 Act 2. So I want to preface this by saying I actually had to re-record some parts of this because it's June 11th now. I finished editing this June 10th, but then I went back to give it one more revision. And it turns out, for a good portion of these, I forgot to have my mic plugged in. So if you're recording anything, please do make sure to check that your mic is on because I don't know how to describe the anger that I felt having to go back and look through everything to see if I actually talked. I already gave my thoughts on Act 2 in the first part, but to make it short, I think Act 1 is just better for me. I gave that a 9.5, while Act 2 I think is a 9. I think the lore reveals in this were amazing, the characters were just as strong, the moments were more potent because some of them were sadder, while I preferred the happier moments at the beginning. At the end of the day, I feel like this was a great progression for the story. And just overall, Act 2 was a great follow-up to Act 1. It did not disappoint. And so soon I'm going to be covering Act 3, which hopefully shouldn't take as long since it's about the size of Act 1. And I just want to thank you all to whoever's watching this video, whether it's nobody or 100 people. I just want you all to know that I'm so happy that you watched. I wish I could have put these two videos together. I wish I could have put Act 1, 2, and the finale to this in one big video, but I just couldn't because of the limitations of the software that I'm using. So I'm sorry about that. But just know that this is the most effort I've put into a video ever on my entire channel. And granted, I've had two-part videos before, but this was deliberate. While before, I was just too lazy to edit. So I'm just so happy that I was able to put it out, and I'm able to show how much effort I'm trying to put into what I'm doing. So, so now that this is the most current version of me, I want to say thank y'all for watching. I hope y'all enjoy. Act 3 will be coming soon, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.
I I just I just don't like that though.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Infamous Isaac, and welcome to Lostbelt 6, Act 3. This is the crazy and epic finale to Lostbelt 6, the 3-act story that I've been going through throughout the past month that it's been releasing. And ever since it's been releasing, I've just been enjoying everything about it, whether it's the characters, the story, the world building, or just how it engrossed me since the first section. I'm gonna keep my thoughts on Act 3 for the spoiler-free review a little short because my opinion hasn't changed. I really like this Lostbelt. You could probably tell from the title. So I'll put Act 1 and Act 2 in the description below if you want to see those as well. So my review for Act 3, 10 out of 10 story for sure. My favorite act out of all three of them. And overall, Lostbelt 6 is, again, the best part of FGO entirely. Definitely my favorite story out of all the Lostbelts, singularities, sub-singularities, events, anything. It was so good. I loved it. And I hope that's enough to convince you to go and play if you already played FGO and haven't caught up yet. Or if maybe you're interested and had a lingering suspicion, like maybe I should play it. Definitely go give it a watch. And I can't wait to talk about more story content coming out for this game in the future, especially with Lostbelt 7, because I can't wait for that. Of course, I'm going into this as blind as I can, so please don't say anything about it if you know anything. But regardless, without further ado, this is my thoughts and opinions on Lostbelt 6, Act 3. I hope y'all enjoy, and I'll see you all at the end of the video. So, we pick up where we last left off, with an interlude starting off Act 3. And this interlude just basically gives us a little summary as to what happened between the end of Morgan and where we're going to start off with the coronation. So you pick up with the Stormbringer crew, where they've been living in almost complete darkness, just barely getting by for 45 days. And they get a letter from Da Vinci saying like, yeah, so we're done. We're going to be leaving soon, so, you guys can get ready, and we'll meet up with you guys soon. So everybody's just super happy the operation is done. And after the coronation, they're going to go over to the Stormbringer crew, and they're going to be chilling. Everybody's celebrating, but Holmes feels like something is wrong. They haven't found out a lot of the plot points, a lot of the missing details of this Lostbelt. And while you don't really need to, at the end of the day, you did defeat Morgan. He still feels like something is going to happen. And this is his intuition talking too, so everybody takes his word for it, and they all stay on high alert, ready for anything to go down. But then we cut away to everybody going back to Salisbury. Percival stays behind in Camelot, so does Vargas, and they're just basically there helping the Round Table army, but also communicating with the upper fairies, because Nocnaria is going to be the crowned queen. Instead of Artoria, she relinquished the battle to Nocnaria, so she was just declared the winner. So Percival stayed behind to help excavate the Rongominiad spears for Chaldea. Meanwhile, Vargas stayed behind to help the Round Table army, but also be a mediator for Nocnaria and the Northern fairies and the upper crust of upper fairies in Camelot. And with that, we cut away back to the main group, and they're all the way back in Mike's bar in Salisbury, where the coronation is going to be held in the cathedral. In the bar, we have Habitrail, who's up on the second floor relaxing because ever since the battle with Morgan, she's just been super drained for some reason, even though she never fought. Cucullin, or Kucaster, whichever you prefer, goes over to Nocnaria's camp before she comes over to go ask her a couple questions. So we cut away to Nocnaria and Kucaster talking in her camp, and she's basically telling him like, yo, so Morgan and Queen Maeve had a deal before Morgan took the throne, right? Because Maeve had just as much magical energy as Morgan, or at least enough to rival her. So they had a deal in place where if Morgan weakened or if she died, the Kingclad would take place as Britain's new ruler. And since Morgan fell, it makes sense for Nocnaria, who's Maeve's predecessor, to follow that rule. Another reason though is because Nocnaria is the only fairy besides Artoria maybe to handle all the energy that was in the throne. So that explains why she didn't want anybody to damage the throne all the way back in the Morgan section, because the throne is the reason why all the fairies are able to be reincarnated and born again after the war that happened back in the year 400 in this Lostbelt's history. Because they were supposed to die out. That's what Beryl saw when he first got there. But Morgan used her energy and put it into the throne to recycle all their lives and just their energy. And now everybody just gets ready to go over to the cathedral in time for the coronation. And that's the end of interlude 1. So this section is called the end coronation ceremony in like dashes. I don't know if anything could sound more foreboding. So as the ceremony gets underway though, we see all these high profile fairies like Aurora, like Spriggan, all these people, right? We don't see Bargus because she's still back in Camelot, but we see Percival. So our party, including Artorium, Muramasa, Kakolin, Fujimaru, Mash, and Percival, Habitrot stayed back at the bar because she's still super sick, are all here. We're like way back in the back. But we get handed some wine, the same wine that Nocnaria gets handed when she walks up the stage and she's in front of everybody, right? As Nocnaria has the wine in her hand, she's giving a speech and everything, and then to cap it all off, she goes to drink the wine, right? We all in our party don't drink the wine because A, Fujimaru, he isn't of age yet, so he doesn't do it. Mash follows suit, and everybody else just follows because why not? And interrupting the ceremony before she's inaugurated and after she drank the wine, a couple of northern fairies come up and they just start spilling a bunch of dirt on Nocnaria's name. A lot of information about the northern fairies is revealed here, like how Mab's corpse is the entirety of the King Clan area, and the reason why Nocnaria exists is because that corpse, which is still active to this day, gave birth to her. We already knew that Nocnaria was specially made from Maeve, but the way that it's revealed here is just it manages to sway all the fairies that are in attendance. And then we also get revealed like, oh, the way that she removes Moore's curse from fairies is just transferring it to other fairies and then making them into the giant corpse. And just a bunch of stuff about the working class and how if you get her love, then you basically become a slave to her. And Nocnaria is trying to come up with a bunch of rebuttals for each one, but it's not enough to sway the fairies back into her camp. So a lot of the Salisbury Knights and just a bunch of people start revolting against her, and she starts spilling blood because when she drank the wine, she knew that it was poison. She drank it in full faith that like, all right, somebody tried to kill me. This wine is not enough to affect me, to kill me in any sense of the word. The only reason it's not able to kill her is because of her connections to all the fairies. If she has a bunch of followers, then she gets stronger and stronger. But because there's a bunch of doubt and unrest brewing in this area, a lot of the northern fairies start doubting her, and so she can't handle the poison like she normally would be. And so we get down there, we start trying to help out Nocnaria because she gets stabbed in the back and she's dying. And because all the fairies start doubting her and losing faith in her, her memories are leaving as well. Because if you remember, Nocnaria shares part of herself with those fairies. So if they start leaving her, then all of her memory and her being leaves as well. So when she's dying in Artoria's arms, it's basically like she's barely there. She remembers Artoria, she remembers who she is, but she doesn't remember who Nocnaria is, who she is herself. And so she's dying and she just pleads with Artoria, like, just keep following that star, just giving her some last words. And Artoria is devastated by this. This is her best friend. And she's gone in the blink of an eye because fairies. Every single time she's lost something or someone is because of fairies. And so they're all about to leave, but then somebody tries to attack Fujimaru, but Mash intercepts just in time, and it turns out to be Melusine, and she's about to try to kill all of them. But then Percival, since he's with us, he hits her with a crazy speech 100 check, and it works completely, just chastising her. And it works because Percival is her little brother, so why wouldn't it, right? And so she leaves, and she's looking over all of Salisbury, and it's turned into a complete war zone. All these fairies are fighting, everybody's just beefing, and she looks further away and you can see that all of Britain is starting to turn to a war zone because other things are arising, not just the fairies. We cut away to Bargus where we see a bunch of Moors coming out of the pit and they're trying to invade Camelot and all of Britain. And so Bargus tries to get all the fairies, all the Round Table army out of here. So she sends them away and she's basically trying to defend or escape, covering their flank. The curse of the black dog is starting to affect her. So she's gonna start acting out crazy soon. But for right now, she's trying her best to just defend the fairies and the humans. But that marks the end of the ceremony. Man, this is so sad. This is so sad. So as we continue, I want to drop the name of this section right now. It's literally called The End. This section is even more foreboding than the last one. But as we continue, everybody gets out of Salisbury and they go into the forest. And there's just even more Moors than there were ever before, right? And so we're just trying to fight them off. Percival is still here with us, but he can barely fight. So we just basically take him away and just dip, right? And then we cut away to a couple of other perspectives. So Spriggan is all the way back in Warwick now, and he's in his own vault, but we don't really care about him because he's a bum. But the one important thing about him is that we learned Aurora was the one that orchestrated the murder of Knocknaria, right? And we've seen glimpses of Aurora's true nature throughout the entire story and why Coral is actually the better person compared to Aurora. And now it's just definitive. Coral it really is the better person. It's still not fully explained yet, so I'm not gonna go into it, but just know that Aurora is the worst out of all the clan heads besides Spriggan. She is, oh my goodness, she's sinister. But then we actually cut away to Aurora, and Coral's talking to her, basically just like, yo, so there's a bunch of refugees outside that we need to bring in. There's some people reporting signs of Morse curse inside. Salisbury has been locked up, but we need to open the gates, Aurora. This is my plan to do whatever, right? And Aurora was like, nah, just lock it up, kill all the people with Morse curse. Basically, just prioritize our lives over theirs. And then Coral was just like, well, why? Why would we do that? And then Aurora was like, listen, Coral, don't worry about it. Just let it resolve itself. And so it cuts away to Maria now, and she learns about Hernados and just all the stuff going on with them, right? How Britain is basically trying to kill all the fairies on it itself, you know? Before Murian gets to really elaborate more on that, someone comes up behind her and kills her. And they have like a black, weird arm. And they reveal to Murian that the Fang clan did kill the Wing clan, but they were behind it the whole time, the person that stabbed her. And then Marian dies before Konyaskanya gets there, and Konyaskanya is talking to her for a little bit, and she's just like, "Hey, promise me that you'll protect Britain." And Konyaskanya like, "Yeah, I will. Don't worry." And so Marian's dead now. And then we cut away back to the main party where we see Regibrit there because Aurora told them to follow the group. And since Regibrit has complete and utter respect for our group, he's like, yeah, I mean, shoot, I'll help you guys out for as long as I can because at the end of the day, you guys are true heroes, true knights. So I'm going to get you guys to where you need to be. And then whatever it takes, I'll do it. So we ride on Regibrit and he takes us all the way back to the storm border. And it takes like a day and a half to get there, but we get there. By the time we get there, the cart is literally falling apart. Regibrit is almost dead from exhaustion, and literally it falls apart. And he's just like, "Listen, you guys gotta keep going without me. I can't go any further. I've got you guys as far as I could. Finish the rest. I believe in you all." And then he falls, you know. He falls, and we leave him there. So we go to the storm border. So once we get on the ship, we fly up and we just see all of Britain on fire. Everything is being razed to the ground. We see Bargus going all the way over to Manchester, and we actually go over there to see her, but then we see literally Bargus has been turned into a giant black dog, and she's just not her anymore. So when we try to save her, we have to leave because she's just too strong. We can't do anything about her. And so she's going over to Oxford, but it's going to take like 5 hours for that to happen. So we had to find a way to plan out something against her, right? We see something crawl out of the great pit in Eternanos, the god that's been seen all throughout these murals. One thing I forgot to mention was Percival's backstory and something that was revealed, where Percival was actually a substitute for the Child of Prophecy made by Woodwose and raised by Melusine. And while Melusine had no ill intentions of raising Percival, everybody else who was involved in that project basically did. He was selected by the Spear Selection, a sex weapon, and he's able to use it because only humans are able to use the Spear Selection. So when he first was selected by the Spear, he was 10 years old, and it accelerated his age, so he had a 20-year-old body. And so with the current day that we're in Britain, he's 26 years old, when originally he would have been 16 like Artoria. And when he used it again against Woodrose, he didn't get any older because humans only live up to 30 years old in this universe. So he should basically be dead, but because of his constitution, he's still alive somehow, but he's barely breathing. And he basically just apologizes to Artoria for making the Round Table Army as basically a front. But Artoria's like, hey, listen, You did what you could, and I respect you for it, Percival. But regardless, we go over to Camelot next to the pit, and we try to get the Rongo Miniat spears, but we learned from Cucullin earlier, I didn't mention this. We can't use the spears because they're divine constructs, and since proper human history has been wiped clean, we can't use those divine constructs. There has to be certain stipulations, and we don't meet those stipulations. So there's no point in going for them, and Camelot has already been destroyed. So now we just basically had to leave because we can't do anything. Even though if Hernanos and if Bargus escape, they're going to become proper human history threats, not just Britain. Because again, this is a singularity. This is no longer a lost belt. They would basically just cause and wreak havoc, but we can't do anything about it. We're not strong enough. We don't have the facilities. So we try to escape, but all the hands of Hernanos just start grabbing and crawling from underneath Britain and trying to get the storm border. But Konyaskanya shows up last second because the Marines request to save Britain, and she just assumes that like, hey, this is the only way to save Britain is by saving Chaldea because they planned on saving Britain. So she takes some of the curse that Hernanos is dishing out, and then she leaves, letting us have a way to just escape. And then we're just here in complete shambles, not knowing what to do. How do we handle this going forward? The world might end. What do we do? And then Merlin starts talking to them. And if you remember, Merlin was actually talking to Artoria when she was a lot younger. So he's been here before, just never physically. He's only been here through the staff of selection, right? And so he's communicating with us. He can never show up physically. It's just like an illusion. But he's basically like, listen, we can change things. You just gotta trust me. I'll take you to Avalon. And so everybody decides to trust Merlin, and the only people that are able to go are Fujimaru, Mash, Artoria, and Muramasa. And we go straight into Avalon. And that's the end of the end. Alright, so now we continue on to the section called Epic of Creation. And this section goes into the creation of Britain. So as Merlin is contacting everybody on the stone border, he's basically just like, alright, I'm gonna take you guys to Avalon. And the way he's gonna do it is by using like Albion's tunnel basically through the corpse and all that to take them to the center of Britain, which is where Avalon is located. And one thing that's mentioned is that Cucullin was actually summoned for this exact purpose, to get Artoria into Avalon, whether she's dead or alive. Odin wanted him to do this. And the reason for it is because Artoria is basically going to be the basis for making Excalibur. And Artoria herself mentions this because she knew Cucullin was here just for that purpose. Because the Bells were basically giving her that information, and she's known this ever since she was born. Like, yo, I'm gonna be the basis for Excalibur. She just never told anybody. You also gotta remember the Fey Eyes as well, so she could basically tell what people were thinking the whole time. And so as Fujimaru, Mash, Artoria, and Muramasa leave with Merlin, everybody else on the Storm Border stays, and they just wait for their arrival. So, as we go into the cave of Albion, we have Merlin basically tell us the entire conception of Britain. And it starts off with what we already knew, where Hernunos showed up after 6 fairies were there with no land, no nothing except just ocean, right? And he was just having a fun time with the fairies, living, loving, laughing, and everything. And he had a little human on top of him who was his priestess. But after things settled down, the fairies started getting jealous. Like, all right, well, you're here and we're having merriment and everything. Well, why aren't you giving us any land? And so the fairies, after just wondering where the land is, everything, not getting what they wanted, on top of that, the priestess was chastising them for their sins, decided to plot to kill Hernados, right? And so they held a little festival, a little feast. And so once the feast is underway, they give him some wine that was poisoned, and it kills him completely. And the fairies dissected the priestess little by little, making sure that she stayed alive so they could have her DNA to make humans. And so after his death, the fairies basically used Hernados' body as a land. And ever since then, every time fairies would die and they expand, they would use their bodies as landmass. So that's why Fairy Britain grew, but they never really exceeded the population that they had because they couldn't make more people. And the reason why the pit was formed was because that was the area where Hernados was located, right? And he refused for any fairy to have any land built on top of him. And it's a huge area because Hernados himself is huge. He isn't all of Britain. It's just he takes up one part of it, but he can control it because it's built around him. His hatred and his strong emotion towards the fairies were what kept causing the calamities and the great calamities. Because they were just Hernanos basically fighting back against the fairies. Because the whole reason why Hernanos came down to Fairy Britain was because he was meant to kill all the fairies that were still alive because of their arrogance, right? Because they were the ones meant to make the Excalibur that is in proper human history, right? But for Fairy Britain. But they didn't because they were lazy. And so when Sephar showed up and started killing everybody, Excalibur wasn't there to stop it. And so that's why there was just nothing there in Fairy Britain. So Sephar is a type moon creature that landed on Earth and wiped out a bunch of the ancient civilizations that we hear about, like Atlantis. And the only way that it was stopped was because of Excalibur. And so to rectify this, they're going to make Excalibur in Avalon to rectify this singularity. Because you got to remember, Morgan worked so much in this Lostbelt that she changed it into a singularity. The Lostbelt tree is gone. Apparently, Sephar is from Fate Extella, which I definitely would not know because the only Fate property that I have read is this. And that doesn't mean that I haven't watched the others, it's just this is the only one that I've actually gone to read. And then we progress and we see Morgan's era and everything and how she basically revitalized all of Britain after it almost ended. So two things to make note of here. Hernanos is just a dead body. There's nothing alive in him anymore, no consciousness. So if we go to fight him, we're just basically putting this god to rest once and for all after all the years of torture and suffering he's gone through. The second thing is that the whole time that we're in Avalon and go into this cave, Merlin was transformed into Foe, so he could just transport himself better. He doesn't realize this, but we do. But with that being said, we move on from the epic of creation and go on to the moment a star is born, the subtitle to this entire Lostbelt. So, now we go into the moment a star is born. This section starts off with us going through Artoria's memories after having passed through Avalon's test to get into it, but now we have to pass through it to be able to make Excalibur. And Merlin's just basically telling us like, yeah, so Artoria, you're gonna be seeing these, well, we're gonna be fighting these manifestations of your memories. So she's gonna disappear for a little bit each time she goes. And so on the inside, we see Artoria go through her life as an early child all the way up until this point, right? So winter is basically her being born and being sent into the Tintigo village where she's born and raised up until she's 16, just learning about the child of prophecy. But they basically hate her, despise her, or are indifferent towards her because the fairies don't believe in the child of prophecy, or at least if they do, they don't believe it enough to really put full stock behind it, right? The only people that really did are the Round Table Army, or Morgan because she knows. And so while she's like 6 years old, she's training with the staff of selection, and she hears Merlin's voice through the staff. And so for a year, she's just training under Merlin, learning about magic, learning about all this type of stuff, right? And just about the world. And while he isn't able to be there physically, he's giving her as much knowledge as he can. But somebody saw her training after all that time, reported it to the village, and they took away her staff until she turned 16. So for 10 years, she couldn't talk to Merlin at all. Then we cut to the autumn time memories where she becomes Ector's apprentice, which was one of Asec's friends during her journey. And he's basically a blacksmith, right? We saw him in the fragments, so if you remember him, he was just the guy in the huge suit of armor next to Habitron and Mash. And so once Artoria goes over to him, she's just learning all about blacksmithing and everything. She's learning the tech and learning about Hector and how good of a person he actually is, and how good he is compared to the fairies themselves. And through being an apprentice of his, he got to meet Bargus way before she became the child of prophecy legitimately. And Bargus didn't think of her much back then because she was so weak. And then we go to the summertime memories where we see the fairies basically beg Artoria to go and kill Hector, and she tries to go over there and do it because even though they treated her like garbage, she literally lost two toes because she was in the barn the whole time. She never had a home, and during winter, they froze off. So she goes to try to kill Hector, but she just can't bring herself to do it. So she leaves, and the fairies find out about this, and they put her in prison, right? And so Woodrose is basically sent here to execute the Child of Prophecy. But Hector, he basically makes an escape route for her, gets her the staff of selection, and sends her off on her own, right? Because he was so severely injured, though, he literally dies in her hands. And that's the end of Hector. So now she's just going around all of Fairyburn trying to prove that she's the child of prophecy, but she can't because people don't believe her or they don't believe the prophecy itself. So she goes to the Waking Forest hoping that she can forget her memories, but she can't because she's the child of prophecy. So she pretends to forget her memories, and then this is where she meets Fujimaru, and she pretends to play along with it, but she actually stuck with him because of how earnest and how hopeless he looked. She wanted to help him. And so this is where the good memories start, the spring memories. But we don't cut away to any spring memories. She doesn't leave because to her she doesn't have any good memories. And so on the outside, we have Muramasa talking to Merlin and how, yeah, if Artoria goes through with making Excalibur, she's going to disappear. She's not going to be there anymore. And it's the sacrifice that she had to make. And she knew this all along. She's willingly doing it. But then Merlin starts talking about the other things that they're going to have to do when they go back, right, after everything is done. How Bargus is actually a calamity. She's the child of calamity, just like how Artoria is the child of prophecy. And so if they don't stop her or Hernanos, those two are gonna bleed out of this Lostbelt and they're gonna become proper human history threats that will basically be on the level of a small incineration of humanity that Gatia tried to do in part one. So if they don't stop it, it's over. They're cooked. And so once Artoria comes back and then the spring memories don't happen, they go over to where the Excalibur forge is, right? And so she enters and she's just seeing everything fade away from her. She's dying. But then Muramasa comes in last second and he's just like, yo, I'm a blacksmith, dog. And so she's just there like, why would you do this? You're gonna die if you do it. And he's like, hey, I mean, I believed you. I followed you since the beginning. I'm gonna believe in you to the very end. He dies making this weapon, even though he still has that promise to the foreign god. It doesn't matter, you know? He believed in her. And so once Artoria comes back, everybody's like, oh shoot, you're back. You're not dead. That's so fire. But then they realize Muramasa's gone, so they saw what the trade off was. But she manages to bring back the concept of Excalibur, so now we have that divine construct, or at least we can make one from Excalibur. And now we have a weapon for defeating the foreign god. We came here looking for the Rongo Miniads and we left with this. And so they all get sent back in time by an hour before Hernanos came out of the pit. So Merlin's basically like, alright, so you guys are gonna stop Vargas, stop Hernanos, and once everything's done, Britain should be good, and you guys are gonna be able to leave. Mission complete. So my interpretation of this is that Artoria found some type of kinship with Bargus because you have one who's a child of prophecy and one who's a child of calamity. So maybe Artoria found like, oh shoot, maybe you and I aren't so different, even though you're an established, accomplished knight, and I'm just some hick from Tintago. And I could see that same sort of connection with her and Percival because Percival was a substitute child of prophecy. And I don't think Artoria knew that, but we could kind of tell, like, oh, she has the spear selection while she has the staff, so they kind of could bond over that fact. But now, with that behind us, we move on from the moment a star is born and progress until interlude number 2. So now with interlude 2, we get to see Melusine's perspective of what's going on in Britain. So she goes over to Salisbury to see what Aurora's doing, and when she gets there, she sees that Coral isn't there. So when she asks Aurora about her disappearance, Aurora just tells her like, oh yeah, I killed her because her questions of morality were really starting to get annoying. And this is where we really get to see Aurora's true side, even though I said that like 3 times already. Aurora is about being beloved by the people. So if anybody else is getting more attention to her, like let's say Queen Morgan, Nocnaria, or Artoria, she deals with them. And that's why her assassination of Nocnaria was so ill-advised, because even Springer knew like, yo, we need a ruler in this Britain. So why would you kill her right now? Aurora asks Melusine to bring her over to proper human history after everything's done, but Melusine knows if Aurora went over there, she wouldn't be able to do anything like she did here. It just wouldn't work. Fairies are not like humans. So to save her because she loves her, she decides to kill her. So she runs her lance right through her, and she leaves her there. And because Aurora isn't there keeping Melusine's form, Melusine transforms into Albion. So now with all that said and done, we move on for interlude 2 and go into a certain prophecy. Everybody's back on the storm border, and now we have plans on what we want to do with Barkus and what we do with Hernanos, right? But we find out that there's a third calamity, and that third calamity is Albion, aka Melusine. Because after she killed Aurora, she became Albion. And so now we have to take care of her because she's attacking the ship. And the reason why she's attacking the ship instead of the way she did it before, where she didn't at all, everybody's like, oh yeah, because Artorias here now. She has a means of stopping all these calamities, so now they're instinctively going towards her to stop her. So Percival gets on top of the storm border and uses himself to attract Albion's attention, and then the rest of us are fighting her, right? And the reason why that works is because you gotta remember Percival's still her brother. And even though Albion is just Albion now, Melusine is still deep, deep, deep inside of that. So once they manage to defeat her, she tries to run away, but Percival uses the Spear of Selection to damage her fatally. And because of that, Percival vanishes into dust because that was the last use of the Spear of Selection that he could use before he died. So now Albion is gone. We don't have to worry about her for now. And so now we direct our eyes to Vargas and Hernanos. They just want to take care of Hernanos because he's the bigger threat. But Mash decides like, yeah, I want to go down there and fight Vargas while we have the time to recoup, right? They have 40 minutes of leeway to repair the storm border, right? They decide that, alright, Mash, Fujimaru, and Munier are going to take the shadow border all the way down to Norwich since Vargas is on their way there. So if we take care of her here, we won't have to worry about her later in proper human history. So she isn't an enemy of it. So Mash and everybody go down there, and now we fight Vargas. So as we go on to fight Vargas, Da Vinci actually makes her own mission and goes to Salisbury to get Habitat and the carrier pigeon that we had. So as she gets there, she sees Mike, she thanks him and says her final goodbyes before getting all the things and leaving. And Mike is super sad about this, so he's about to turn to remorse because of his pure passion. But then, knowing that Da Vinci's a free spirit, he stops himself. He just sits there crying, just realizing that the best thing that happened to him is gone now. So with that out the way, Da Vinci's back in the storm border, and now we're in the shadow border going to Bargist. And Munier and Fujimaru can't leave it because of the crazy managing that we've seen before in Act 1 and Act 2. So it's up to Mash to fight her alone. She manages to summon Gawain and Lancelot because of the fact that Lancelot and Gawain both exist right now in Fairy Britain. And so those two manage to help defeat Bargus with their crazy strength, managing to put her at ease, to put her to rest. Because Bargus, before she died, she actually saw everybody in Manchester eating and killing all the humans because apparently that's what she did to her lover. The reason why she didn't remember is because somebody put a seal on her memory so she didn't lose her mind, so that people still thought like, oh yeah, Adonis is still alive, or at least she thought so. So once she found that out, she just started tweaking out because she should have became a calamity a long time ago. But at that moment, as soon as she figured that out, she's like, yeah, none of these fairies in Manchester can go back to proper human history. So that's the end of Bargist. But then we move on to Hernanos, right? Now that everybody's back on the storm border after having defeated those two calamities, all that's left is him, and we go over to Camelot, and we're basically just trying to take him down, but we can't because the curses are regenerating his flesh. Regenerate faster than we can do damage to him. So the only way that we think we can beat him is basically by getting the 12 Rongo mini-ads that Morgan had in store, right? So Artoria, before they even finished the sentence, went over to Camelot to get those Rongo mini-ads, and she manages to fire them, and it almost kills her. They don't do enough damage to take down Hernanos. And so she's there like, alright, well that's not going to work because this is meant for Morgan. So how do I fire these so that we can do enough damage, right? And as she realizes, she is the concept of Excalibur now. So why not just reroute it through herself, making her basically a pseudo Excalibur? So she does that, and it pierces Hernanos because he has a divine core, right? And if you remember all the way back at the end of Morgan, Babo and Sith fell down into the pit and she prayed to Hernanos, basically saying like, yo, please, just kill these fairies. So she basically became the divine core for Hernanos now. But Artoria manages to do some serious damage, and now that he's regenerating, Chaldea has to find a way to kill him. They don't have any serious way to do damage to him. But Habitat, since Da Vinci went to go get her, she brought the black barrel that she had all the way back from Sheffield. And the reason why she didn't give him to the crew sooner was because if she gave the black barrel to Mash, Mash would remember her. And Morgan erased Habitat, Mash, and her memories so that they wouldn't erase each other whenever they remember each other because it would be a contradiction. When she remembers about Habitat, Habitat starts fading away. And I'll be honest with you, this scene definitely got me tearing up. I was crying for sure because this scene seeing Habitat and Mash from the very beginning of the story all the way back in Sheffield in Act 1, and then ASAC and her journey in Act 2, and then seeing this be the conclusion in Act 3, it hurt because I really liked Habitat. Because of that, Mash and Fujimaru managed to fire off a black bolt shot, piercing Hernanos' divine core, killing him. leaving Kokolin up on the top of the storm border with Mash and Fujimaru, basically being like, yeah, so I'm dying, so I'm gonna dip. Like I'm gonna disintegrate because I'm a servant from proper human history. I helped you guys out, but that's all I could really do now. So I'll see you guys later. And the reason why he's so injured is because he actually defended the storm border from all the hands of Hernanos that were trying to destroy it. The second time at least, not the first time. I didn't mention that. So he's gone now. He's dematerialized. So now nobody's left. Literally, it's all the people from the storm border crew, and that's it. Because Artoria disintegrated as soon as she fired that Excalibur shot. So now everybody's just like, oh shoot, it's over. We did it. We won. We have a divine construct. We won. We lived, and now we can go back to Trimagestus the Third and Novum Chaldea and Sion too. Don't forget. I don't think I forgot about her. So once everything is done, we see Oberon show up on top of the storm border, but something is amok. And we notice, like, yo, this is not Oberon. This is not him. And everybody on the storm border is like, yeah, this his spirit origin just fluctuating like crazy. This is not him. And so he's telling everybody, like, yeah, so I'm alive. I'm glad to see you guys are all here, and that it's not over. It's definitely not over. And we see Blanca's dead because all the malice directed towards Oberon was absorbed by her. And so he just kicks her off with the storm border. She's dead. And we see his true nature. This isn't Oberon. This is Oberon Vortigern, a mix of the Midnight Summer Dream Fairy and the will of Britain itself to kill itself. They mix together. And so he's been scheming from this very beginning of the story, basically on how he can kill all of Britain because he hates everything. Once he reveals his true name, we see a conceptual insect creature just come through, and it's basically if you go and get absorbed by it, you're gonna fall forever. You're not gonna be able to escape it. It's like a black hole, but a black hole at least has an escape. This does not. You're in it, and once you're in it, you're not leaving. And so, with that reveal, that marks the end of a certain prophecy. We move on to the final section of Lostbelt 6, Midsummer Night's Dream. So now we start with the finale to Lostbelt 6, A Midsummer Night's Dream. And this basically continues right where we left off, where Oberon is explaining, like, yeah, I've been here since the beginning. I've been plotting, scheming, finding a way to just destroy Britain because of Vortigern's desire, but also Oberon's desire is to destroy proper human history. So he had to find a way to do both. It took a long time because Morgan was a threat, and he had to find a way to destroy Morgan. Hernanos was a threat, so he had to find a way to destroy Hernanos so he could fully flourish. And the first person to show up, the best person to show up, be it, was Fujimaru themselves because he was from proper human history. He didn't want to fight Morgan, but the only way it could go down was by doing that. Hernanos then showed up, which was restricted by Morgan, and so they had to beat them as well. And he just had to move a lot of pieces together and away from each other to make sure that everything played perfectly into the revival. Everything played perfectly into his full awakening and reveal. So once he talks about all that, Chaldea falls into the insect, into the conceptual insect. And so now, when Fujimaru wakes up from falling into the insect, Oberon's just like, yo, so I'm gonna give you a choice. You can either fall asleep and die, or you can fight me and die. You know, either way, it's not much, but I'm giving you the option. And Fujimaru, seeing a star in a distant dream, is just like, yeah, sure, I'll fight you. And then Artoria Caster shows up after Fujimaru summons her out of nowhere because she showed up out of pure will. And she's in her final ascension, and this is what I've been waiting for the entire story. When was her final ascension gonna show up? And it's here. And then Mash wakes up too, and everybody on the border is waking up as well. And now it's Artoria, Mash, and Fujimaru versus Oberon. And so now it's just pure beef on site. And let me tell you, Hernanos was a hard fight, like a really difficult fight, probably the hardest in the game. But Oberon was a very close second. Oh my goodness, this is insane. This fight is so difficult. Fujimaru falls asleep during the fight, and he starts dreaming of him and Oberon talking because they're talking to each other through dreams. And Oberon's just like, so you wanted to know about my real reason, right? And he's like, proper human history just disgusts me because of the fact that they don't allow fantasies to exist. Oberon himself is from a fantasy, a Midsummer Night's Dream. So the fact that Chaldea is just going around pruning all this fantasies is just evil to him, right? So he wanted to stop it. It's not a heroic act. It's not a deed. He's doing it because he hates them as well. And so once Oberon tells Fujimaru to wake up, he's defeated. And Altoria injured him fatally and knocked him off of the storm border, now leaving those three on top of the storm border, right? And Artoria disappears because, just like Merlin, she only came here through sheer will determination. So she's like, listen, you guys are gonna make it out alive, all right? And then she leaves. Now the storm border crew's falling, and they don't know what to do because since this falls infinitely, they don't really have a way to get out. There's no entrance, there's no exit. But because Melusine was still alive, as I mentioned earlier, she manages to make an exit for Chaldea because she saw the insect as a threat to Britain. And so Chaldea manages to get out, and the insect is destroyed. And so now they're just there looking over Britain the way it was back like 14,000 years ago, where it was just a giant blue sea with a giant blue sky, and everybody's just having a good time looking out at the sky because it's been so long. All they've seen for 50 days was just Britain's orange sky, and Britain was beautiful. Artoria admits that she just wanted Mash and Fujimaru to see that like Britain was beautiful, at a certain point, even if the fairies were evil, even if some of the people were just downright sinister, and what happened here was truly a tragedy. Britain at its core was a beautiful place. And so as everybody's watching the sky, they're all just happy, having a great time, just remembering what happened. And they go back inside to the storm border, ready to go back to Novum Chaldea after having beat Lostbelt 6. And we see Sion in the post credits, basically in the epilogue, just like, oh shoot, they did it, nice, with 2 minutes to spare too. So that's pretty crazy. But now we just have to find out what we're gonna do with Konya since she's still a beast, and what we're gonna do after that. We have to plan. But for now, let's just see them come back. That's the end of Lost Belt 6. So a couple things I forgot to mention in the video. Number one was Spriggan's death. Spriggan died to Bargus when she came over to Norwich and then was going over to Oxford. I forgot to mention it because I generally did not care about him, which I'm sorry if that comes off as rude. There's certain characters I prefer and do not prefer. Next is Oberon's arm. So the person that killed Murian was Oberon, and we could tell because that same arm that showed up in that story bit was Oberon's arm. And then after that, we have Oberon as a pretender as well. So he literally created a new class because of how specific his case is. Because he's literally a mix of Vortigern from Britain and from A Midsummer Night's Dream, Oberon. Both of them mixed together. They're two in the same body. And I think there's certain cases in this game where that's actually a thing, but they're more also egos. But I don't know. It's a cool thing that he created his own class. After that, we have Aurora's death. So while she was dying, she got to see Albion, aka Melusine, fly around above her. And what she realized as she was mulling over her death was basically the one nice thing that she did in her life was take in Melusine and take care of her. Even though she was just doing it to show off to her followers, that in itself was a genuine act to take care of somebody. Last but not least, we have the Fairy Knights, right? So all the Fairy Knights that Morgan had, we have the obvious ones with Babon Sith, Bargist, and then we have Melusine, right? But then we have the other ones that weren't so obvious, with Ector, and then we have Tamlin, Habitrat, and then we have Mash. So she technically had 6 knights. So with that out of the way, let me tell you all about my share factory struggles, the thing I used to edit these videos. So this video took a lot longer to get out, and I'm sorry about that. I think it's going to be 5 days since the last time I uploaded when this comes out. And the reason for that is because I use Share Factory to edit, right? It's a PlayStation tool to edit videos that you make. And I have learned a lot of things from doing this, and some of them is that if the video is too long, it will crash the system. So my thing crashed twice, then I had to restart a good majority of the video. I didn't lose too much progress to where I would have to scrap it and just start over, but I had to redo some parts where it took multiple days to do. So today I'm literally redoing the last portion because it crashed on me yesterday, like at 9. And I literally was talking to Reaper about it, and I was on the fringe of a mental breakdown, bro. I was so upset. Literally because I forgot to save once. Literally only one time, and I would have been able to continue. But I didn't, because I'm an idiot. And so now I'm here, able to finish it. I'm going to render it, I'm going to upload it, and you guys are going to see it. But man, this video just took a lot out of me, even more than the other one, which was a 2-parter, which is crazy. So with all that said and done, I have learned a lot from this. I've learned a lot about FGO, I learned a lot about editing, and now I can really say that I can edit more videos in good faith. At least I hope I can. Regardless though, My thoughts on Lostbelt 6 Act 3. I thought it was great. Definitely my favorite part of Lostbelt 6. I would have to rank it 3 at the top, then 1 in the middle, and then 2 at the bottom. I just still can't get over some parts that really kind of bored me a little bit. But overall, Lostbelt 6, it's a 9.5 to a 10. Altogether, it's amazing. And Act 3 really solidified that because I haven't cried reading FGO in a very long time. I think the last time was probably Gatia at the end of Solomon and all that. But here, like, it got me multiple times, whether it's with Habitrot or Bargist or the end where we're singing the blue sky and just all the sad character deaths overall. This story was so good. I don't want to rehash what I was saying before because I've already gone on length to say my opinion on Lost Boat 6. But just know my opinion hasn't changed. This story is amazing. One of the best stories I've ever read and one of the best stories I've read from FGO period, you know? So if you haven't really gone through and tried to read it, I definitely recommend it. And honestly, that's going to be it for me for now. Thank you all for watching. I hope y'all enjoy. This has been such an endeavor, but I wouldn't change it for the world. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Hopefully more videos will be more frequent, but not like daily uploads. I'm still trying to figure out the kinks about that. I've been saying them a bunch throughout the end of these videos, but just know there will be a plan coming up soon. So for now, hope y'all have a great rest of your day. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for watching if you made it all the way to the end. And I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.